This story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah,
okay.
rhino. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting its front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
One here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. There's an Aussie that has been dive-bombed by our version of the magpie, which is much bigger. Every springtime, the folk in this village need to use the old Aussie trick to stop being swooped. You have to wear an ice cream tub on your head with eyes drawn on the back so they think you're watching them. True story.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. Is my microphone okay? No. I don't know why. Sorry, there's a problem with my microphone. Let me just sort this out. It sounded a bit weird. Is that better? It'll do. It'll do for now. You can hear me. Right, it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock as usual. And coming up at midnight, it's the phone-in hour. So what I'd like to talk to you about is the welfare state. Now, I think we can all agree at the moment the welfare state is in a state. Right? Because we have a situation where it doesn't really seem to serve anybody particularly well. It seems that a lot of people are still held in poverty in the welfare state. A lot of people don't get the support and the help that they need. And yet on the other side of the coin is the taxpayer saying, well, look at all these people who are claiming benefits and not working for a living. So the whole system seems to be not working, right? Like a lot of people in this country. But if we want a welfare state that is proper, a good welfare state that supports you when you're out of work, a welfare state that looks after you properly when you need that help, then we're going to have to pay for it. And in a recent poll, the net positive of numbers was that most people think we should be spending more money on the welfare state. So, is that what you want? Do you want a proper welfare state? We'll dig into what's going on with the disability benefits and things like that, of which there has been a change of heart from the Labour government, or from Keir Starmer. So we'll talk about that as well a little bit later on. But do you think that this welfare state is working? If you're on it, do you get enough? If you're sitting and you're not on it and you've never been on it, do you think people get too much? And are you worried that if you ever need a safety net, you won't get it? And what about if you're somebody who's worked most of their life and they suddenly need help and support from the country that they've paid into? Do you feel that you are well enough looked after? Do you feel that you were taken into, I'm so sorry this has happened to you, here's what we can do to help you? Or did you feel like you were fighting for every single penny? Because the way I look at it, we're neither one thing nor the other. There's not a safety net. It doesn't seem to serve anybody particularly well, and yet it costs an absolute fortune. So are we better to go the route of places, I don't know, like France or Germany or Norway or Sweden, where they pay a lot of tax? Don't get me wrong, a lot of tax, but when they need it, the welfare state is more than there and more than supports them and doesn't make them feel bad about asking for that support. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000. So we'll be looking into that at midnight. Before that as well, let me tell you, the Vincent Moss, fabulous Vincent Moss, will be here. He'll be taking us through the newspapers for Tuesday. We also have Josh Rom in the studio, our entertainment journalist, talking to us about Downton Abbey and F1, the movie, and Vanessa D'Ambrosio will also be here, who's our sports reporter, taking us through some really interesting sport that's coming up for you in the next week or so. Now, though, it's been over 1,200 days since Russia occupied Ukraine, starting a war that seems like it's never going to end. Everybody expected it to end in days, if not weeks. Definitely maximum months, and here we are 3 years later. Russia has lost 1 million troops since the beginning of this invasion. That's according to Ukraine. And yet it continues to attack Ukraine, with one of its officials calling a recent aerial attack the biggest to date. In fact, the biggest aerial attacks on Ukraine have all happened in the last month, since peace talks or ceasefire talks were supposed to be happening. Diplomacy still at a standstill. NATO talks last week were dominated by the situation in the Middle East. In fact, the press cycle has been dominated with the situation in the Middle East, which is why I wanted to do a catch-up with what is going on between Russia and Ukraine, and for how much longer it can possibly continue. Dr. Stephen Hall joins me now, author and lecturer in Russian and post-Soviet politics at the University of Bath. Professor, thank you for joining me. It's good to see you again.
Good evening, Petrie. It's good to see you.
Listen, a lot of attention, the world's attention, has been taken away by Israel, Gaza, and certainly Iran, Israel, US, from what's happening in Russia. But it is getting worse there, right? It is definitely, the attacks are coming thick and fast from Russia. They're going deeper into Ukraine. They're not just on the borders anymore.
Well, certainly. Well, I mean, yes, they are going deeper into Ukraine. It's slow. Even Russian state media talks about meat assaults, which gives you some idea as to how much they're not trying to hide it anymore. We are, apparently, there's 50,000 Russian troops 20 kilometers from Sumy, which is a capital, not capital, obviously, but a big city closer to Kiev. They were there at the beginning of the war, and then they were kicked out, and now they've come back because of the Ukrainian attack on Kursk. Allegedly, according to North Korean propaganda, or rumours from North Korean propaganda, I should say, they're pointing towards their soldiers being supported, being praised for going into Ukraine, so we can expect more North Korean soldiers to come along at some point. And Russia is moving forward in the Donbass. It's got into Dnipro Oblast, which is the oblast to the west of Donetsk and Luhansk. So yes, they are slowly moving forward, but I want to reiterate it is slow at the moment.
Let's have a look at the sort of the situation with Russia in terms of where it sits globally. It lost Syria. Syria was incredibly important to Vladimir Putin. Iran has been supplying Russia with an awful lot of munitions. And China has been hands off, to say the least, with what's been happening with Iran and the US. It's trying to play the diplomatic role here. But nonetheless, Russia's support here doesn't appear to be as strong as it once was. Iran no longer in a position to be immediately sending munitions to Russia. Where does that leave Russia? Does it leave it slightly more isolated than we originally thought it would be?
Well, I think Russia has been isolated for quite a while in terms of, yes, it allegedly has the support of the Global South, but I think the Global South is more disinterested about this war rather than necessarily supporting Russia. Russia has been isolated in terms of the votes at the United Nations General Assembly. Yes, Bashar al-Assad, a key Putin ally, was removed, let's say, and is now living in Moscow. So Putin has lost an ally there, and the ability for Russia to exert great power status in the Middle East and also in the Mediterranean. Iran may be on its way out, the Ayatollahs may be on their way out, but Russia now has access to the technology from the Shaheeds. It's building its own Shaheeds effectively. So if the Iranians were to go, by the Iranians I mean the current authorities, were to go south, then it wouldn't necessarily affect the Russians too badly. As for China, yes, it has tried to stay out of the game, but at the same time has made sure that Russia has received, surreptitiously no doubt, a lot of military equipment. So it is going to be interesting to see that, yes, if Iran goes the same way as Assad, then it won't necessarily affect Russia too badly.
I mean, this is clearly why Putin was immediately talking peace, because he didn't want the Ayatollah to be toppled. But it's interesting that you say that China, albeit surreptitiously, been supporting Russia, because what is interesting is that it isn't being outspoken about its support of Russia, because it wants its pseudo-capitalism to increase, and it needs the West for that. In fact, it needs Donald Trump for that.
Well, it does need Donald Trump for that, and I think it's also wary of secondary sanctions. If the Americans follow through on this 500% tariff that countries who are supporting Russia would have to face in regards to access to the American market, that would no doubt scare the Chinese. It would also scare the Indians. And so, yes, there is this attempt on the front, as it were, to say that we're not involved, to talk about wanting to find peace and neutrality, to talk about forging a new relationship with America, as hard as that may be to believe at the moment. But in terms of supporting Russia, it doesn't want to see the current Kremlin being deposed, because if it was to be deposed, no doubt China would be very worried that it would be a pro-Western Kremlin, as hard as that may be to believe. And so you would have Russian soldiers facing the other way towards Beijing, potentially. That would be a particular worry for the Chinese. It's unlikely at the moment, I know, but, as an autocrat, you have to worry about these things. Anything could lead to you losing power. So that certainly is something that I think China has been hedging its bets about, supporting Russia just enough, in the same way the West has supported Ukraine just enough to stay in the fight.
If we look at the future, though, for Russia, with the country on a war footing now, we know that a lot of the money, a lot of the time, a lot of the people are used now towards this war effort. How long can Russia continue, in your view? Is it just never ending?
Well, I mean, certainly, as hard as it is to believe, we've seen that there are 147 million Russians in Russia, and we don't quite know, because Rosstat, the state statisticians, don't always tell the truth. If we divide that by two, because males and females, and Russia being quite a conservative society, mostly has male soldiers, then that becomes, there is always a finite resource. We are seeing that yet again they have lowered, as far as I'm aware, and I'm also a military expert, but as far as people I've been talking to, they have lowered the requirements as to what they need in terms of soldiers. They are getting older, they're becoming less fit, let's put it that way. So Russia certainly is struggling, but Russia does have a large populace. It's something that they've always been very good at in terms of fighting, just sending wave after wave.
Yeah.
Potentially it could be a year. The estimation is that, from the West at least, that Russia can survive another year, but no one is quite certain about Ukraine, primarily because Ukraine has fewer men and fewer women in terms of the population. And there are some estimations that I'm seeing now that put Ukraine in a really difficult position in 6 months.
That also would clash with the Americans doing their defence spending review. And many people believe that at that point, America will no longer be supporting Ukraine in any official capacity in terms of finances. It's also the point at which it is believed that they will start the drawdown of American bases across Europe. Vladimir Putin's just got to wait, hasn't he? He's just got to wait this out, because in 6 months' time, Europe will be weaker without those American bases, and Ukraine will be weaker without that money.
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, Donald Trump is mercurial to an extreme. He was talking about how much he actually likes NATO. So if Western politicians are, particularly Mark Rutte, are able to keep on calling him daddy, then who knows what's going to happen about, who knows what's going to happen there. But the Americans may stay, yes, they may withdraw some troops from Europe, but they may stay, they may still keep on sharing intelligence and various other things that only America can do. So we'll have to wait and see on the European front. Certainly in regards to Ukraine, the munitions, the weapons that are coming from America in drips and drabs are from the Biden administration, and they're supposed to dry up around about August.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see in terms of what Donald Trump decides to do. I still try to remain positive that this is a man who is, as I say, mercurial, and he will listen to whoever speaks to him last. And hopefully the person who speaks to him last is supportive of Ukraine and understanding that this is actually important for the West, is existential. So we'll have to wait and see in regards to that. I remain hopeful more than anything, but hope always dies last.
Yeah, it's interesting though when you look at Russia now saying that the extra spending by NATO could collapse NATO. I mean, presumably they're just saying that because they don't want to see NATO spending all this extra money on defending themselves.
Well, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, was quite clear about that. Yes, it would lead to the collapse of NATO. They're playing on the idea that you have different, obviously NATO is different states, and as we saw with Spain, they kicked up a fuss about increasing their spending from 2% to 5%. They may never get there. 2035 is a long way off. Apologies, my cat has just walked across. So we'll see. But Robert Fico in Slovakia, Viktor Orban, of course, in Hungary, and I'm sure others will say, well, actually, we don't need to spend this much money. So they're certainly playing it. But we've seen that the Russian economy, the Russians have been spending more on the military than ever since the Soviet Union, at 6.3%, which is of GDP, which is huge. They've reduced it quite recently. So the Russian economy isn't doing particularly well either. And we'll have to see in terms of whether Russia can maintain that financial escapade, let's say, in regards to military spending.
And let's turn now to Ukraine. Vladimir Zelensky has been out and about again talking to people. He was invited to the NATO opening of the NATO summit, which must have rubbed Putin up the wrong way, although he wasn't in on the meetings. Germany now emphasising that they're going to be giving much more support to Ukraine, although not quite in the terms of the Taurus bomb that they want to use, but they were going to teach them how to build their own. And Ukraine has proved to be quite the phenomenal war machine itself in developing these drones and in developing new technology that the rest of Europe now wants to buy from them. But how much more can Ukraine keep the begging bowl out?
Well, I think the begging bowl is perhaps a misnomer, but in terms of there is the need for Europe to step up. I've been saying this for a long time, since this war began, and even before. There is a need for Europe to step up. America, regardless of what happens with Donald Trump, is ever changing at the moment. If the Democrats win the House of Representatives in 2026, great. But even then, I'm not necessarily certain that the Democrats are going to be utterly changed. They're not going to be evolutionary. Yeah. And who comes after Donald Trump could well be a Republican or even a Democrat who decides that Europe needs to stand on its own 2 feet. So this is also important. And Europe needs to find a way to rebuild its military and to maintain support for Ukraine. Perhaps the best way to do that is to actually share military infrastructure, military building. So you don't end up with, 28 different tanks. You end up with 2. That makes it much easier. We also see that Ukraine, as you've alluded to, is DARPA on the Dnipro in terms of the ability to use basic off-the-shelf materials to great effect in terms of weaponry. And certainly there is more that could be done from Western militaries in terms of using Ukraine, which was the second biggest military-industrial complex in the Soviet Union and still retains a lot of the factories. They're on hiatus at the moment, but they could certainly be used. So there is a lot more that Europe could be doing, and it needs to be happening, if not today, then definitely by tomorrow morning.
Peace, it doesn't seem at the moment to be possible under the terms that Russia is offering. Will it ever be?
Well, it will be. It's always a possibility. It largely depends on what you classify as peace. If you want an end to this conflict, if you want an end to this violence, and there's no Russian soldiers ever to go back into Ukraine, that will happen probably after Vladimir Putin has left this mortal coil. Donald Trump is living in La La Land if he believes that Putin really wants peace. So Russia is rebuilding its military, it's reconstituting its military, it's militarizing its economy, militarizing its society. It is preparing for either further incursions into Ukraine or somewhere else, possibly to test NATO's Article 5, particularly up with Donald Trump as president. We'll have to wait and see on that. The Germans are estimating it's 5 years from now. So again, we're really playing catch up here. So in terms of, is there ever a chance of peace? Yes, of course, there's always a chance of peace, Petrie. It just depends on whether Russia is hurting, whether Vladimir Putin has left his position of power, which I appreciate sounds a very unlikely scenario at the moment, but who knows? He is in his 70s. So it certainly is something. I think the Ukrainians are quite clear that they would like to see peace. They would like Russia to be brought to a ceasefire. This certainly talk, I think, from The Atlantic published it today in regards to the Ukrainians, off the record, of course, are saying that actually we would like a ceasefire to happen quite quickly because we've seen where this may be going for Ukraine. But Russia needs to be brought to a ceasefire. Otherwise, it's just going to be a diktat from Russia.
Yeah, and already recently Russia has said, look, actually, we want all of Ukraine. That was when the Iran stuff was going on. They just declared, look, we're not going to mess around with just, this percentage that we've got already. We want all of it.
Well, they definitely want regime change. I mean, that's quite clear. They want a neutral Ukraine, which can only be a pro-Russian Ukraine, and a pro-Russian government in Kiev. They may willingly, and that's very kind of them, of course, give up Ivano-Frankivsk and Lviv for a rump Ukrainian state in the west that perhaps can just become a satellite of Poland. Who knows? But they want to have Kharkiv, they want to have Odessa, Mykolaiv, Donetsk, because these are, of course, all Russian cities, and the mother of Russian cities is Kiev. I mean, I'm obviously don't believe this, but this is coming out of the Kremlin. So this certainly is something. And yes, Putin has been quite clear with the Iran conflict. He wants Ukraine, that Ukraine and Russia are the same people, that they are historical unity, and all of this claptrap that's been going on now for 4, 5, even more years.
I mean, I just wish, well, it doesn't matter what I wish for, but this just doesn't look like it's going to end in any short amount of time. Good to speak to you as ever. Thank you so much. Always just such a calm voice on this whole situation. Dr. Stephen Hall, there, author and lecturer in Russian and post-Soviet politics at the University of Bath. Quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and it's also competition time. Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester on July the 19th. We'll also put you up in a hotel and give you £5,000 worth of spending money. Here's all the details that you'll need to enter.
On iArcade, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland, for the chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and £5,000 spending money. Text the word WIN to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m, and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission, or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com. Good luck, yeah? Sorted.
Yeah, indeed. Good luck with that, and get onto it if you want those tickets, because the time is running out. So coming up at midnight, I want to talk to you about the welfare state and the state of the welfare state. Voters do not support cuts to disability payments. This is a poll that was carried out. So that's not really surprising. We knew that the backbenchers, Labour's backbenchers, also didn't agree with those cuts to disability payments. In fact, if you look at this poll, the net gain is for more money to be spent on welfare. And I wonder if that is the right way to go. Now, before you start screaming, oh, she's a lefty, I'm not. I really am not. But bear me out, because the situation is that the welfare state that we have at the moment, it doesn't feel like it's fit for anything. It really doesn't feel like it does anything for anyone, right? It costs the taxpayer, of which I am one, an absolute fortune, right? It costs us a fortune on one hand, and on the other hand, it doesn't seem to properly support the people who are on it. It doesn't seem to be lifting people out of poverty or helping them at their most needy. I've heard so many stories of people who've suddenly lost their job, didn't know anything about the welfare state, have never had to rely on the welfare state ever in their lives, and they've gone to get benefits and there's no help there. There's nothing there. They're told that they've got to wait 3 weeks, or they've got to wait a month, or they've got a mortgage and then you don't get anything for that, or you don't get anything for this. So it seems to be that it doesn't really work for anybody. So I wonder if it is time to accept now that welfare is just going to have to be part of our lives. It is just going to have to be part of figuring out the tax bill. It's just going to have to be there because, like I said, it doesn't seem to work for anybody. It doesn't work for the taxpayer that is paying and paying and paying and paying. And then when they turn to the welfare state, there's none there for them. There's no help, no real help. Or it doesn't seem to be working for people who are on welfare either. So who does it work for? And is it time to just completely throw the whole thing out and start again? How do we fix a welfare state that doesn't seem to work for anybody? That's what I want to talk about at midnight. And there are examples of other countries, but they pay a lot in tax. But when they do pay a lot in tax, the welfare state is there as it's meant to be, as a proper safety net that provides proper support. Is that what you want? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And with me right now is our sports reporter, Vanessa D'Ambrosio. How are you doing?
I'm doing fabulous.
Good, excellent. Now, let's kick off with some football.
Yeah, so we've got the Women's European Championship starting on Wednesday. So this is really exciting. It's being held in Switzerland, and this is the first time that Switzerland has done any women's sporting event to this kind of scale. And I just think it speaks like volumes to the where women's sport and women's football in particular is starting to like make a stride in mainstream sports and entertainment. So it's really cool. We've got England's first match against France on Saturday, and it's really interesting. I found it kind of funny looking at some of the like interesting stats. England is the second favourites to Spain, 17 versus 25% sort of odds, and Wales, which is in England's pool, has a 0% chance.
Oh, no.
I was like, oh, bless.
And why? How is Wales in England's pool?
Well, so they go in these they go in pools. So you're going different groups. So in the group you have England, Netherlands, France, and Wales, and then then the two progress to the next, and then it's sort of you get down to the champion.
Yeah, I mean, I've even noticed now at some pubs they have the women's game on, which is unheard of years ago, and people are there actually going to watch the games.
Well, I think it's really cool. So England were the former European champions back in 2022. They beat Germany in Wembley, and that was a packed stadium. And then you have the Women's World Cup, which was also in Australia, and they had stadiums full of people, and I just think it's so good to get behind it. And even actually just quickly on the women's sports, you've got the WNBA, Caitlin Clark. She's a an amazing basketball, like once in a lifetime, like generational great. She's selling out stadiums, and they're having like millions, like I think it was 1.2 million or something people watching her games, and it was a preseason game.
Wow.
Yeah. So women are starting to make headways. I know that's WNBA and we're talking about football, but just about people in sports bars. They're broadcasting that on TV in America, and it's getting millions of viewers. It's getting sold out stadiums. They actually have to move the games to bigger stadiums when she's playing.
I mean, that is. I mean, maybe it's just that women's sport is just getting better, right? That the women are taking it more seriously. The backers are taking it more seriously. The training is more serious, and that's just improving the watchability for that.
I think the landscape, I think women being able to participate in sports is a big one.
Yeah.
You know, Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, you know, I'm a huge boxing fanatic, combat sports, but they're about to have their third fight, and that's going to be the first time that women are headlining in Madison Square Gardens.
Wow.
It's also going to be an all-women's card, which is enormous, and like, this is sensational. Their first fight got put into Sports Illustrated as one of the best fights of all time, not just of women's fights, particularly their 5th round. Their second one completely overshone Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul, and they're about to have their third fight. Now, Katie Taylor, when she first started boxing, she's an Irish fighter. She had to pretend she was a boy because she wasn't allowed to fight. So I think that it's not just that women have getting better and at sport, they're being able to participate from grassroots all the way up. So they're getting better, but they're having more opportunity. And now we're starting to see the generation of women being born into sport and wanting to be sports players and have that. So it's the talent up and the opportunity as well.
And like you said, and starting from grassroots, because you've got all the schools now, primary schools have got girls teams as well, girls are being, and rugby and all of that, so there's no division in that. Just as a point of interest, in women's boxing, are there weight classes as well?
Yeah, there's definitely weight classes.
Oh, there are?
Yeah, there's weight classes.
So it's not just women fighting
No,
each other,
there's weight classes in all of them. So, and you know, this is also like with MMA as well, with all combat sports, there are weight classes. So it's not like saying like football or basketball where women are put into one pool, that's ages as well as, you know, weights. But yeah, in combat sports, most definitely there's weight classes. It's enormous, you have to have them. Weight classes are there for a reason. You know, you might be more talented from a technical perspective and be competing against someone who's physically bigger than you, and that gap is going to become much smaller, maybe even irrelevant with someone who's bigger.
And while we're on that point of there are classes there for a reason, I believe today is the day that it started, that from now on all participants in female contact sports will be DNA tested. Yeah, so this is a really big deal for particularly if we take Iman Khalif's situation with the Olympics. So they do have a new like president of the board of the IOC, yes. So I think people have a misunderstanding thinking that they're going to pull down your trousers and look at your genitals. It's literally a mouth swab to check your biological chromosomal sex. And I think this is really important. I think that Iman Khalif was used much more as an example for political views rather than fairness in sport. Sport at an elite level is exclusionary because it is talent-based. It is based there that some people are not going to be able to participate because they simply aren't good enough. That doesn't mean you can't participate in the sport. I participate in combat sports. I have no desire to compete professionally, but if I was going to be, I would be fighting against biological women who have proven that we are both of the same chromosomal sex, and we'd also be at the same weight class. We would be weighed in a minimum 24 hours before that bout to make sure that we are of fighting weight. Some of them even have a rehydration clause to make sure that you don't sort of cut a lot of water weight and then rehydrate, which means that you blow up, and therefore there's a weight disparity. So I think it is really fair. I think it's creating fairness in sports. I don't think that anyone should be made an example of, Iman Khalif particularly, even if I disagree with the ICO's
for this person to participate in it.
I mean, it just seemed that kicked up a whole storm of, you know, was she, he, they, intersex? Were they, you know, did they go through male puberty? All of these things. But as you've said, there are bans in sport for a reason, and like, you know, you wouldn't have a featherweight fighting with a heavyweight, because that A, it wouldn't be fair, and B, it could be dangerous.
It's absolutely, it's a full contact sport, and I believe in a Mark-Lee situation that this person has internal testicles, which means they would have gone through male puberty, but has a disability in another physiological form. But your bone density, your structure is that of a male. You possess the benefits of a biological male. I don't think that people should be used as puppet for political reasons, particularly in sport. It's there to be inclusive, to bring people together. But in terms of participation, that may mean that you don't get to compete at that level. And just because you're for women in sport does not mean that you're against trans people or trans athletes. And I really get quite frustrated with people trying to conflate the two because they don't have anything else better to make a point on. And I think that is quite divisive in sport, which is completely contradicts what they're trying to say in the first place.
I mean, this isn't about pushing trans women out. This is about making it fair for everybody, actually, for all. And
if women have come this far, why do we now have to take away from the achievements of women by trying to make it about something else? And I really want the spotlight to keep being put on women doing great things just as much as I do for men, because it's amazing to people succeed. I get adrenaline rushes when I watch sport, and when I see people achieve these like great things, I get the shakes, I get exciting because it's amazing. You're watching history, you're watching people's dreams come true. So why have we got to wash it with a bunch of political views?
I completely agree, and everybody will be tested. I mean, I asked you
yes, it's everybody.
Earlier, so somebody like you would still have a swab.
Yes, there was a point of view that I did listen to of someone who was saying, well, if someone possesses more masculine or feminine features, would they be singled out? And I think that, again, is a very
poor... trying to cause trouble.
Yes, I think that's a really poor excuse for an argument, or not. Just because you might possess more masculine or feminine traits is irrelevant. Doing a swab and having it anonymous, that's it. You know, you don't know whose urine test is whose when it's in a container when they're testing for drugs or, you know, performance enhancing drugs. So why would it matter if you're just doing a swab? And I think that, you know, they could even be behind a curtain and do it. You know, that's silly. So everyone will be tested. Anyone that has masculine or feminine looks, it's irrelevant. That's all it is. It's your chromosomes, and it's going to make sport fairer. And I think it should be just as much as we test for performance-enhancing drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. Talking of boxing, though, there's Eubank Junior.
Yeah, so you've got back in the 90s, the early 90s, so 1990, 1993, you had Eubank Senior and Nigel Benn have a rivalry. Now, this was huge for British boxing. Now, we fast forward, you know, a few decades, and you have their sons fight. So they fought in April, and it was kind of, it was a slight, that weight disparity was something that came up actually in a rehydration clause, because Conor Benn is slightly smaller than Eubank Jr. And they had this out of this world fight. It was crazy. It was almost...
And no one was expecting it to be that good.
No. There were so many questions about, is it going to be a bit of a fizzler, because is it going to live up to their father's sort of hype and legacy? And mate, it absolutely did. I was watching it because I was on a really early shift downstairs, and I'm lucky no one else was around because I was losing my mind. It was absolutely phenomenal. And so they're set to have a rematch on the 20th of September in London, and this is absolutely exciting. This is so amazing for British boxing. There's so much happening in the fight world. And then we also have Daniel Dubois fighting Alexander Usyk in a rematch in a few weeks. So there's such a nice build-up. We've got the women's, then we've got, you know, another Londoner, Daniel Dubois, in an undisputed match against Alexander Usyk, who's, you know, arguably the best of the generation right now. And then fast forward another few weeks and we've got Conor Benn and Eubank Jr. having a rematch. So it's absolutely wild and amazing for British boxing.
And look at you, all excited about it. Listen, we've got to quickly talk about Wimbledon, because that started today.
Yes.
In 34 degrees of heat.
Yes, it has. So they have actually tried to put a clause which apparently is super rare. It's the hottest it's been in 147 years.
Yeah, so it always rains at Wimbledon.
Yeah,
we
exactly.
Yeah.
And so we had Oliver Tarvin. He's like stolen the show because he's now ranked 733rd, and he's about to fight Carlos
Alvarez.
Yes. Alcaraz. I'm terrible at pronouncing names. I'm really good to get the hang of this. Who's the former defending champion and ranked number 2, and they're going to set to match up on Wednesday. So I don't know how they're going to do this in this heat wave. I just think the UK weather is so unpredictable, but it's going to be phenomenal. I think it's so nice. This kid's 21 years of age.
I know there's a lot of young players this time in Wimbledon, and everybody says that it's also the sexiest Wimbledon for many years.
Well, do you know, I've actually never been to Wimbledon, so I think maybe this is a year I should probably
maybe
go.
You should watch it.
And I'll work on my suntan, dazzle them with sweetness.
Yeah, you'll just want them to fight.
Exactly. I'll be in there chanting. But apparently the crowd was chanting for him, and I think that's great. There is something with the amateurs, though, that they don't let them collect all of their prize money, and they still consider him an amateur because he's at university. Yeah, and I don't know, there was an Australian tennis player who also at the US Open, she was set to take home £147,000, and she wasn't allowed to because she's in University of Texas, so she couldn't. And now we have Oliver not be able to take his full 66,000.
That doesn't seem fair. If they're there, they should be paid.
I think so. I think if you're participating, you deserve it, because this might be their peak. They've happened for a bunch of NBA players, that weren't drafted to the NBA, basketball players in America. So they actually changed the rules. They won a court case to change the rules that college players could earn money, because if they didn't get drafted into the NBA, they weren't necessarily going to earn any other money. So I think the same should be done for tennis players, and Oliver should accept his £66,000.
He should, or you can accept it for him.
I'll take it for him, no problem. I can spend it better.
Vanessa D'Ambrosio, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Indeed. Josh Rom is up next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And with me in the studio is Josh Rom, our entertainment journalist, with a very fast track report.
I love it. I
very
absolutely love that. I got to tell you, just like the kind of Silverstone experience, I'm feeling very exposed right now. This is the first and only time for those watching on YouTube that I've ever worn short sleeves on a TV sort of environment. So this is a very odd sensation.
I've got to tell off everybody who wears short sleeves, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, tell you. I'm in the doghouse now. Or am I in the pit stop? Am I in the pit stop or the doghouse?
You're in the pit stop.
So yes, of course. So we're talking, if you didn't get the hint, I am talking about the huge, big summer blockbuster Formula One. I can't even say it. Formula One, the movie starring the likes of Brad Pitt, Javier Bardem, Kerry Condon and Damson Idris. Now, they're billing it as kind of from the makers of Top Gun Maverick, and it's very much that. It's been produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, of course. He's behind the likes of Pirates of the Caribbean, both Top Gun films, Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick, Beverly Hills Cop, as well as Bad Boys. It's directed as well, the same director as Top Gun Maverick, Joseph Kosinski. It's very formulaic. It's kind of got everything that you'd want from a summer blockbuster. It's a formula, but it's a formula that works. It's got this kind of overarching mission. It's got the love interest. It's got the kind of antagonists, but are they an antagonist? You've got a rivalry. You've got Brad Pitt, and a slightly more kind of rough and rugged figure than kind of Tom Cruise's polished like persona that you find in his movies like Top Gun Maverick. But again, it works. It's very immersive. The cinematography is amazing. It's a visual spectacular. You really feel as though, just like in Top Gun Maverick, how you felt like you were in the cockpit, you feel like you're right there up with the driver in the driver's seat. It's a very immersive film, another brilliant action-packed summer blockbuster. And so I come with interviews. I sat down, not with Brad Pitt, unfortunately. However, I did sit down with another Academy Award nominee, Kerry Condon. Now, you might recognise her name. She won the 2023 BAFTA Film Award for Supporting Actress for her role in Martin McDonagh's The Banshees of Inisherin, with the likes of Brendan Gleeson, Barry Keogh, Colin Farrell as well. She was also
wonderful film,
amazing film, and she was nominated for the Academy Award in that same year as well. So I kind of, the first thing I asked her was, of course I had to ask her because of her amazing chemistry with Brad Pitt in this film. So I kind of asked her, what's the key to building that up? Or is there a key?
I suppose I thought about the fact that this is somebody who had to study extremely hard to get to Formula One, because at that level, like, you have to be so intelligent and smart, and particularly if she's a woman and the first position, there would have been a lot of competition. So she would have spent the majority of her life studying. And there's alludes to that she had one husband, right? So I'm thinking she'd one husband probably like since she was a teenager. So she hasn't a lot of experience with men, and I went to an all-girls Catholic school, so I was like, well, then I'm going to say she went to that. So I wanted to show that this was someone who was very confident in their career, but maybe a little shy when it comes to like romantic things, and a little more girly and sweeter. Because otherwise, how is Sonny going to open up to her if she's just going to be like a random girl that he hooked up with when she's already said, oh, I've heard all about your girlfriends. And so there had to be something different to Kate that would bring out the little lost boy part of Sonny. So I had to think about those things, and that's how I came up with the chemistry.
And I love that, because you've kind of almost built a whole backstory from nothing in that way. And kind of, was Brad kind of with you on that journey as well? Did you kind of like discuss that with each other, or discuss the sort of dynamics of that relationship?
No, I just kind of kept my cards close to my chest, yeah. And I also like to see blushing, you know. I don't think you see blushing that much on camera, and like someone who's kind of shy. And I remember when I used to watch films and the woman's very sexually confident, and so I was like, I don't know any women, like, who's like that? Who's confident in every aspect of their job? And it's also kind of unlikable. So I wanted to play with a shyness and a kind of a soft, sweeter kind of a feminine thing that I hadn't seen so much in big, massive movies.
So yeah, Kerry Condon there talking about what she wanted to depict on screen. Now, I was kind of telling you a little bit about this film. It's kind of set in the world of Formula One. Brad's character, Sonny Hayes, they call him the has-been that never was. He's brought back in to kind of revive this fictional team's fortunes because they're right down in the table. Kerry Condon playing this love interest, but something that I noticed is that all the characters in this film are really investable. It's a very easy storyline to follow. So I kind of asked Kerry kind of how she made, was her character an example of how these characters were kind of constructed? What was the kind of Formula One behind it?
Yeah, and I think that really was Joe's choosing all these different actors, you know, and Joe very much encouraged us all to go with our own instinct. And there was a real thing of nothing was wrong. Like, any take was never wrong. It was just an option. And we just go again and give me another option. So I think that allowed all the actors and all the team, like the Apex team, every individual character, to be themselves and to be quite unique and individual, and then have their little wins, which adds to the whole the team aspect of it. So I think that was really Joe encouraging us to be ourselves and not be afraid of anything.
Something else that kind of struck me was when Brad's character, when you guys had this conversation, where Sonny was like, there's that time where when I'm in the driver's seat, my heart slows, I feel like I'm flying and I feel like I'm at peace.
Yeah.
Has there been a moment for you in your career where you've kind of felt like that?
There are moments in acting when I have felt like that, yeah, and usually you know them because you can't remember them afterwards. Like, it's almost like you have a bit of a blackout. You're so in the moment that you're like, I don't really remember what I did. But they're not all the time, you know. Yeah, sometimes you're concentrating on other things. But actually that quote came about from Lewis Hamilton, said that about racing. That was the way he tried to explain it, and then they put it in the script.
And kind of going on from that, is there a particular feeling when you're on set and when you are acting that you actually go and really want to strive for?
I think being very much in the moment and like relaxed, and listening to the person and reacting to what the way they said it, as opposed to like, I've prepared it in front of a mirror and I'm going to keep doing it the exact same way. You have to be like, you have to change it like a tennis match or something. It has to be a back and forth kind of.
I love that. I love that. And especially, it's so funny because you were talking about the moments of like kind of blacking out, and I can kind of just imagine that's almost what the Oscars are like. I could imagine.
Oh my God, yeah, that is a blackout moment for me, without a doubt. Yeah, and the camera's like right there wanting a reaction.
And it's like, and one of the nominees is,
No, like... it's so nerve-wracking. Yeah, the most intimidating room, and you're supposed to be cool with going up and giving a big speech if you win. Like, the whole thing's so surreal.
I could listen to her, but what a lovely voice.
A gorgeous voice.
Gorgeous. I'm a big fan of accents anyway, but she's just gorgeous.
I could tell because when I mentioned her and I mentioned the Banshees of Inisherin, you were like, yes.
That was such a great film.
And also...
The donkey should have got the Oscar.
Yes, it should have.
Yeah.
And something else that I think should get an Oscar, because we've had today, and I'm so excited because we've got our first big look. You know how much of a fan of Downton Abbey I am.
I know you are.
So,
and of Julian Fellowes.
Of
indeed.
Julian Fellowes, yes, indeed. It's so close to my heart. So, yes, Universal today released the trailer for Downton Abbey, the grand finale, and we have our first look right here.
It's hard to accept that it's time to go. Your friendship has never been more important to all of us. But the future of Downton Abbey is now in Mary's hands.
He will be a sensation.
That is what's happened. Now we must just get on with it.
What about her running Downton? Don't you want her in command?
The world is changing. The way we talk, the way we dress, the way we deal with each other.
Surely you're entitled to have some fun.
Classic Mary.
You look back and think about all the changes you've witnessed.
You're the daughter I never had.
I'll treasure those words.
Families like ours must keep moving to survive. And all of your support is more important to me than I can say.
If Mama were alive, what would she do?
Long live Downton Abbey.
Amen to that.
Well, there you go. A lot of people
goosebumps.
will be so excited about that. When does that air?
So that is coming out later on in the year, around kind of early to mid-September. I think it's the 12th of September, I believe. When I first watched that trailer, little story time, and that trailer you kind of saw in the clip. If you're watching on YouTube, there was a newspaper article which said Lady Mary heading for divorce. I literally spat out my drink at lunchtime when I watched the trailer for the first time. I was like, ooh, she's divorcing. No, not Lady Mary divorcing Henry. I'm just so excited, but also
she's very unlucky in love.
So unlucky in love. So she's almost like Henry VIII, divorced, beheaded. She had died and divorced. Yeah. So, but Michelle Dockery, she could do no wrong.
No,
can do no wrong.
And look, and this is properly the final. They're going to make another film.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
They're calling it the grand finale. Julian Fellows has said this is it, because with the previous two...
He must be bored of the characters.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but he's got other projects. We had the Gilded Age on the show.
Yeah, that's
He
true.
likes that now.
That's
He's invested.
True. I've not watched the first episode of Gilded yet because...
You're saving it.
I want to watch them all together. I don't like watching them one at a time.
She's a binger.
I'm a
Our
binger.
Petrie, Lady Hosken. She's a binger.
I don't like waiting. Josh, thank you very much indeed. Josh from Entertainment Journalist, thank you so much. Right, coming up, so don't go anywhere, Vincent Moss will be here in the studio to go through the paper.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Petrie and I'm here with you for the next hour with the paper review, and with me is Vincent Moss, who is a former political editor. Vincent, thank you.
Hi, Petrie.
Hot coming here? Is it still hot outside?
Still pretty hot outside, yeah, very hot.
That's the thing with London, isn't it? It holds on to the heat in a way that nobody can imagine.
Yeah, and overnight it's still going to be hot, 24, 25 degrees, which is pretty hot.
Yeah, that is pretty hot. It's so funny because all I see is everybody complaining about the heat. We always do. But then our houses are built to hold heat, not to release it. So
exactly.
That's why. I tell you what seems to be too hot to handle at the moment, Vincent, and that is the welfare bill for Keir Starmer. Now, he has used the excuse that he had turned his attention to world affairs, what was happening in Ukraine and in NATO and all over the world. It seems like he was saying that he hadn't really properly looked at the reforms until he got back from that, which is a bit of a worrying statement, to be honest. It's not the excuse I think he thinks it is. But anyway, he has, a lot of people describing it as a U-turn. Some people say, well, look, he's done the right thing. He's listened to his backbenchers and he's changed his mind. But we look at the welfare bill, and there is no doubt about it that is increasing exponentially. 1,000 people a day apply for PIP. It seems like this is a never-ending bill. And I was just saying a while ago that the welfare system doesn't seem to work for anybody. It doesn't work for the taxpayer, because we're all sick to death of paying so much in tax, and we'll have to pay more now that these cuts haven't gone through. But it doesn't also seem to work for people who need help either. I hear so many stories of people who are self-employed or have run a business. It's almost impossible for them to get into the welfare system. So is it time to throw the whole thing out and do a better welfare state? Something akin to what they do in Germany or France, where you pay a lot more tax, but it is actually a safety net.
I think so. I mean, what should have really happened is there should have been a whole-scale review. What really happened here is Rachel Reeves needed £5 billion in savings to sort of make her figures add up, and this was snipped away to save a few quid, as the same really happened with the winter fuel payment. There was a U-turn on that too. This was really done as a way of looking for savings, and what really needs to happen is an across-the-piece whole-scale review of welfare to make it work. You highlight rightly the figure of 1,000 people a day extra going on to personal independence payments, but it's also the mental health element of that, which I think has gone up, it's doubled in 5 years. And also we've seen people, as the amount of money in real terms has fallen off for what you get for unemployment benefits, and as the sickness benefits have paid more, people seem to have migrated exponentially onto those higher paying benefits. And what really the government should have done is delayed all of this until at least the autumn, reviewed everything and come back with a plan. And now what it looks like they're doing is, in less than a year, July the 4th is a year since Labour came to power, is potentially, if you include grooming gangs, winter fuel payments, this is at least the third U-turn, and it's emboldening Labour rebels. Once you've rebelled once, it's much easier to rebel again and again, and less than a year into government and you're going to have serial rebels, and that's going to make it very hard for Keir Starmer, despite his large majority, to manage his party. Well,
yeah, because the large majority was supposed to give him carte blanche, really, to push anything through, and if anything, this has proved that is not the case, which is a good thing in a way, because a democracy is all about democratizing decisions. It shouldn't be about one man saying I want this and then the others all just sheepishly following along. So in a sense it is good, but it must be incredibly frustrating for Keir Starmer.
Yeah, very hard for him to manage a party. But a lot of these
so
MPs...
weakened by this.
Very weakened. A lot of his MPs are a lot more independent than the same sort of the MPs that came through when Tony Blair came to power in 1997. They were a lot more happy to follow Tony Blair for a long time without rebelling. This lot don't seem to be, partially because they're very worried about their seats. They don't think they're in for 10 years and 2 terms. No. They think that unless something pretty dramatic happens, they're going to lose their seats. And a way of keeping your seat, usually most of these people have got thousands of claimants in their constituency, and if they were to vote for these reforms that would effectively make many disabled people much poorer, that ain't going to win them the next election. So they really are thinking about their jobs and their careers. 4 years away the next election, but they're already thinking about that. So it's a real problem, and it'll be interesting to see whether on Tuesday the number of climb downs and the changes and the tweaks that the Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall has made to the bill with Keir Starmer is enough to see off the rebellion. Now, Labour seems to think it will get this through. The number of rebels has gone down from about 120 to maybe 40 or 50. That's enough to get it through, but it does leave Keir Starmer pretty damaged.
It really does. But it's an interesting thing that there was a poll done where 1 in 5 voters only really agree that spending on disability benefit must come down. Right, I thought that would be higher, and I think that Rachel Reeves was banking on this being quite a popular one. But when you look at the poll as a whole, people don't like the idea of a big benefits bill, but when you say, OK, who should lose the benefit then, it falls away. Should people lose their housing benefit? Oh, no, not that. Should people lose this benefit? No, not that benefit, another benefit. So no one can quite decide. And actually, when you break down the poll, it looks like the net majority of people questioned think there should be more money spent on welfare.
Yes, I think when people are polled, whether it's healthcare, education, things like that, welfare, looking after disabled people, people always tend to say, yes, I'd pay a bit more in tax for that. When it actually comes to paying more tax, we're already taxed at the highest level for 70 years, that position under the Conservatives as well. People don't want to do it. I think the problem really is to some extent, people don't miss what they've never had. So students who are now paying a lot, for example, in tuition fees, they're very grumpy about it, but I think it was a new thing, new students expected to pay it. I think what they should have done with the welfare issue potentially is you've almost got to accept that people that are already on benefits expect to have those maintained, and a lot of them have got very good cases why they shouldn't be cut. The reforms really need to happen on those who are coming on to the benefits, but then that again leaves...
That's not fair then,
That's not fair, because that leaves Keir Starmer over to the accusations which he's hearing a lot about Law and Order, about a two-tier system. But unless you start somewhere, you're never going to be able to cut those benefits. And it's the old cart before the horse thing. People think more should have been done, and the government's now talking about this, investing into getting people back into work. I think there's 9.5 million people who are economically inactive. Now, in our population of sort of 70 million, that's a really, really big number.
Chunk.
And we've not recovered in the same way as other nations have post-COVID, where people have gone back to work. And we've got a huge number, I think it's about 1 million young people who are not really in employment or education or training. We've got that 9.5 million who are inactive, maybe people in their 50s who haven't gone back to work after COVID, and we've got this spiralling welfare bill that'll be 100 billion, was going to be 100 billion by 2030, and this was only going to be a 5 billion cut, and really now with all the climb downs, that's only going to be about 2.5 billion, so Rachel Reeves has got to find some money to make up for that missing
well, that'll come in October, won't it, in the budget that we're going to have. But the question really for me is, it's about deciding what kind of society we're going to be, because other countries, where's my lovely little list that I had in front of me a moment ago? I've moved it. Oh no, there it is. Where social spending is the highest and the lowest across Europe. These are countries that have made the decision about what kind of society they want to be. So you've got France spending 31% of GDP on social spending. That's really high. We're down at 20% of GDP on social spending. But I suppose Finland, Belgium, these are all higher than us, Italy, Germany, Spain, Japan, they've made a decision about what kind of welfare system that they want and what kind of system that they're prepared to pay for. And if you look at the standard of living in places like Italy and France, it's definitely higher than it is here, but you pay more for it. And I just wonder if we were persuaded that actually our standard of living would increase, even if our spending went down, a more socialist society, if you like, whether people would be persuaded. The problem that I have with that is that even though we're the highest tax we've ever been, it doesn't seem to be being spent properly. It doesn't ever seem to be spent on anything that any of us need. Roads, infrastructure, police, NHS, nothing seems to get done with it. Is that the major issue?
I think that's the key, because if you look at places like where there's big social spending in Scandinavian countries, for example, a lot of that will go on perhaps maternity care, childcare, education,
youth,
that delivers benefits, because it means mothers can carry on working, get back to work sooner, it means children are smarter and that sort of thing. I think the problem with what many people would see with the welfare and the bill here and lots of other spending areas is they don't see that money being spent well. And Labour talks about trying to spend it well, but everybody knows somebody who they probably think shouldn't. Not people, we know people who should be on benefits. We know a lot of people who shouldn't be on benefits and should be working. And I think people look at that and see that and they think, I don't mind paying taxes, I just want it spent well. And particularly not just central government spending, but look at this soaring rise in council tax bills.
And what we get for that.
And people look at wherever you live in the country, you look at what your council does and how it spends that money, and most people probably feel that's not well spent. Now, the councils will say, we've got a duty to house homeless people, their rise in what they call special educational needs transport for children who need that has gone up hugely, temporary accommodation, all those sort of things have have gone up massively. Also, the pension bills of local council employees, another big spending area. About £1 in £4, I think, is spent by local authorities on their own staff's pension bill.
Yeah.
But when it comes to stuff we all want done, the potholes, the bins emptying, streets kept clean, a lot of councils just aren't up to the mark on it, are they?
No, they are genuinely not. I mean, where I am, there's a change in council from Hammersmith and Fulham, I think, to Ealing, in one road. I'm right on the borders of Ealing, and on my side of the road, it's relatively tidy and clean. You cross the road into Ealing, it's like another world. I mean, it's literally across the road. It's across the Uxbridge Road, and it's a mess. There's rubbish all over the roads, there's rubbish all over pavements, there's mattresses stacked up, there's fly tipping, all of it. I mean, quite in one road. And I always think, oh my God, if I just lived a street down, this would be my reality. And they're not even bothering to clean it. It's disgusting.
No, it's how they choose to spend their money.
Yeah.
I mean, where I live in South London is Lambeth, and they, in their wisdom, chose to make non-recyclable rubbish collected. Instead of collecting it every week, which everybody wanted, of course, they now collect it every fortnight. Now, in this heat, can you imagine what's going on with some of the rubbish in
imagine what
the boroughs?
Birmingham's like.
Well, exactly. So, and these are just basic things. People just want to pay their taxes and get their rubbish collected and for the roads to be in a decent state. And they see that as fairly basic. And there's quite a lot of councils of all political shades that just are failing to do that. Now, they will plead poverty and say they've had lots of cuts in central government funding. They have.
But they've also wasted
Yes.
so much money. I mean, this is the thing, and I wonder if that is what's preventing us from becoming a society where welfare is not just something that, oh, you're getting welfare, are you? But it's something that is genuinely there for people, because we don't trust the system. We don't trust the systems. We don't trust the money will be spent properly. We know people who are ripping us off. But I don't believe that happens in other countries, because there's another view on socialism. There's another ideal about if you pay in, I think when you lose your job in Germany, you get 66% of an annual salary for the first couple of years, whatever salary you were on.
It's pretty good.
And then you can start, by then you'll have got another job. But we wouldn't trust them to do that.
I think we don't trust them, but it's also, there's been a breakdown over the last 5 to 10 years, probably, of the social contract and what people think they're entitled to. I was reading a newspaper column the other day where somebody was talking about somebody throwing some litter down, and the columnist said to that person, pick it up, and the man said, I pay my taxes. Well, paying your taxes doesn't give you the right to drop litter. And I think in a wider sense, what's happened with the health service, for example, is people just think there's stuff that people shouldn't be going to the doctors for. I was talking to a nurse once who said that somebody had an ingrowing toenail, excuse anybody who finds that a bit unpleasant, and they'd gone to the surgery because they wanted a free plaster to put over it, because they didn't think that they should have to go to the chemist and buy their own plasters. So people think they're entitled to things that I wouldn't think they're entitled to. And you would argue, we've had these discussions before about tattoo removal. Is that something that other taxpayers should pay for and things like that? And there are other things that people go to hospitals for that probably they shouldn't be there for. They've got a headache, stomach's a bit upset for the first time. Now, obviously, people are worried about certain things. Go to the pharmacist, take some advice, ring the helplines. Shouldn't be taking up hospital time. But I think some people think they are entitled to do these things, and that's part of the problem as well.
Yeah, I remember a particular case, Vincent, about that, where a woman, her daughter, who was about 2 or 3 years old, had stepped in some dog poo. And so she went to A&E to get the nurse to remove the dog poo off the shoe, because she said dog poo's dangerous for children. Well, not on your shoe, love.
And
it's only if they poke it in your eye.
Well, exactly, and not if
she
you wash
wanted
it
the
off.
nurse to clean it off for her. That's a genuine case.
Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
And listeners and
I
viewers
would
must
have fined her for
have
that.
loads of those. There are time wasters, aren't there? And there's the people who book appointments, don't turn up, outpatients appointments, things like that. So society's got questions to answer as well as the people who spend it, where people just think it's okay to waste time and money.
I just don't believe that happens in these other countries. I know Germany really well, and people work really hard. They are able to be educated all of their lives. Many of them are students for 20, 30 years, but they are valued, and if they need help, it's there. If they need to go to a doctor, they can go, but they seem to have respect for the system because perhaps they pay more for it.
Yeah, and respect is a key thing. It's like those very criticised Robert Jenrick, the Conservative Justice spokesman's videos of all those people, and it was in London, but it happens in other parts of the country, people just pushing through on a regular basis, fair jumping on tubes and buses, railways, and this has now become a widespread thing. Now, part of that is people think, especially on the railways, it's so expensive, I'm not paying that. And as more and more people do it, and the other thing is, it's that thing where people, honest people, see people doing that and think, well, they're not paying for it. It's not fair on me. Why should I be paying for it? So the whole thing, because it's not tackled, just spirals. And I think in London, for example, they estimate that fare dodging is about 5% of the revenue. Well, I think in some areas it's an awful lot higher than that.
So do I.
And think how much money could be brought in and used for sensible things if the people who were supposed to be enforcing revenue inspections just actually did that.
Yeah. I know, it all seems to be so imbalanced, it really does, but like you said, society has much to answer for on this. Vincent and I are going to take a very quick break, but we'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and with me is Vincent Moss, former political editor, and let's have a quick look at the Seattle Times, and just above the title, so this is our American paper, immigration raids leave many scared to be brown. There's been some horrendous stories coming out of the US, not least that a Canadian man died in ICE custody, and they think there's been 13 deaths that they know of in ICE custody since February, sorry.
Yeah, it's frightening, and there's lots of other things going on in the world and in America, so it's not getting the daily coverage it should be. But it's interesting how some neighbourhoods are now turning out and trying to spot these immigration raids and protest against them, because they know kind of what sort of vehicles they drive, and they know how they think the...
no, they're sort of unmarked with no number plates and things like that.
Exactly,
well.
And usually illegally parked, so they think they can spot them. But so there's a real backlash against this, and it must be a terrifying place to be, because there's no guarantee that even if you're there legally, let alone just an undocumented migrant who's been doing his bit for her bit for the economy for a long time, it's scary, and you never know, you could be asleep and the next thing you know you're picked up by immigration and you're in a van.
And the problem is with the lack of due process, it is very difficult for you to prove that you have a right to remain there, because by the time you've been picked up and scuttled off to God knows where, then your due process isn't there. And now there's this talk about removing birthright citizenship, and if they backdate that, then there will be literally babies thrown out, picked up and thrown out of the country.
And the argument that Trump always made was that a lot of these people are bad people and they're criminals and they're murderers.
But then that's not who they're picking up.
And an awful lot of them are not, and they've committed no crimes at all. So it seems really iniquitous. And as you say, the terrible thing about it is there's a lack of due process. I mean, if they are criminals, prove that they're criminals and they're bad people, and by all means deal with them. But not a lot of these people who seem innocent.
Oh, there was one guy who was thrown to the floor of Gardner and I saw the video of him being punched in the head, and he'd been here for 30 odd years, and had 2 of his sons were Marines.
Yeah.
He'd produced 2 boys who went into the military, and they still don't know where it disappeared.
And that's often what happens with migrants who come in, particularly from places like Mexico and other places of the southern American states. They come in because they want a better life for their children. They work hard themselves. They try and put their kids into good schools, and their children often go on to become doctors, teachers, lawyers, and, as you say, sort of army and Marines.
It's very, very worrying, and I can imagine why people are worried just to be not white at the moment in America, which is, again, something I never thought I would ever say out loud. This story, the Idaho gunman dead after fatal ambush of firefighters. This is somebody they believe who set a wildfire, and then the first responders were called, and then he began shooting at the first responders, killing 2 of them and wounding a 3rd. I mean, this is heinous, isn't it? What a horrible thing.
Yeah, it's a horrendous story. Not clear yet why this gunman did it, and he is now dead. But to set a fire, the heroic firefighters responding, and then 2 of them are killed and a 3rd is wounded, just absolutely horrific. But we've seen about all the stuff about American school shootings, and this seems to be another twist on a country that's got far too many guns and far too few gun controls.
It is absolutely the horrifying thing about people turning up to do good, to run into danger, to help people, and being killed for their trouble is it is the worst of the worst, isn't it? It's like when people attack doctors or ambulance drivers here in this country. You think these people have come out to help you.
Yeah, and that does happen here to some extent. Luckily,
really
not with guns.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the FT. Okay, so diluted welfare reform halves the savings, but still pushes 150,000 people into poverty. So this is, we'll find out more of the details, but the budget hole now is nearly $4 billion.
Yeah, and Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor's headroom was only 10 billion. That's what she needed. And she's got to have the confidence of the markets if she's going to carry on successfully. And I think this climb down, if you like, on the welfare revolt is to see off the welfare revolt will cost taxpayers 2.5 billion, but with you add that together to the other U-turns, it does total about £4 billion, and it will still leave 150,000 people pushed into poverty, according to the FT. So it's a kind of lose-lose for the government.
Well, that's what I'm sort of saying about welfare. It doesn't seem to work for anybody. I mean, how is that a thing? You know, that it's still... you know, that 2.5 billion, and yet it still pushes 150,000 into poverty. So the welfare system just isn't apparently working for anyone. No,
the FT says that had they not made that climb down, instead of being 150,000 people pushed into poverty by 2030, it would be 250,000 people. So it's just fewer people pushed into poverty, and the FT is starting that speculation, which is where the story really moves next, is, I think, as you mentioned earlier, what does it mean for the budget in the autumn? And it's saying tax rise threat mounts.
Yeah.
So we are potentially looking at yet more taxes. Now that's a very difficult position for the government because it said it won't be doing that. So
she's gonna have to say the whole landscape has changed with defence spending and things like that to get us to do this. Estonian soldiers during war games by the river Narva, which separates their country left and Russia right in May. So this is NATO bolstering the eastern flank with war games. This has been going on for quite some time, though. While Moscow is tied up with its invasion of Ukraine, many along NATO's 2,600-kilometre border with Russia expect President Vladimir Putin to one day turn his attention to the alliance's eastern flank.
Well,
which he will. We know Estonia's in the firing line. We know that. I mean, you'd have to mind that's a brilliant photograph. Russia on one side.
Yeah, and they are worried, and rightly so. And I mean, it does help that NATO spending is going to go up, and it's heading towards the 5% that President Trump demanded, and UK's defence spending will go up. But the people most at risk are that eastern flank, and if and when Putin resolves, or there's a ceasefire in Ukraine, it could well be that other nations on the eastern flank with Russia are under threat.
I mean, that photograph really says it all, doesn't it, with Russia on one side and Estonia on the other, because they are so close.
Exactly.
I mean, you literally throw a rock across there practically. And you're in one side of the other. No wonder they feel vulnerable, right?
Yes.
Really extraordinary. Good front page from the Financial Times, actually. The Daily Telegraph, a photograph there of the Britain's number 2, Katie Boulter, for tennis, right on the front there. But the main story they've chosen is BBC boss at festival for rappers hate chant. Davey made a decision on anti-Israel broadcasts that left footage online all day. And there are people calling for him to resign now, that this is a step too far.
There are, and this story rather sadly has sort of overshadowed Glastonbury and the BBC's coverage of it. This is this guy, this rapper Bob Villan, who chanted death, death to the IDF, the Israeli Defence Forces, caused a huge storm. I mean, the BBC have recognised that they did the wrong thing by not pulling it off air, and they've effectively apologised for that, but the police are still investigating, and Ofcom, the regulators, are also investigating. So despite the BBC's apology, this story does go on. I don't think there's anybody that who doesn't feel that this wasn't a terrible thing and was appalling, and that inciting violence goes very much against the culture of Glastonbury. Glastonbury have said they condemn it too. So everybody's condemned it, but the investigation continues, and
I wonder if the police need to be involved, though. I mean, fine for Ofcom and the BBC and, the culture, media and sport, but for the police?
Well, I think freedom of expression is paramount. Protest has always gone hand in hand with music. I think the issue that some people are making is the inciting of violence. I think that's the issue that this has where the line may have been crossed in some people's view. Yeah. But rock stars, pop stars, rappers have always.
But it was against the IDF specifically.
Yes.
Which is a military force. But anyway, I suppose that whatever outcome it will be, we'll find out soon enough. Reeves set to slash ISA tax allowance. She's scrabbling around, isn't she? Looking under the cushions, looking under the sofa, trying to find anything she can cut.
Well, it's a desperate attempt. This has been mooted. The current ISA cash allowance is £20,000 a year you can save in an ISA. But the problem the government has with that, and Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has with it, is English people, compared to Americans and others, we're really cautious about investing in shares and boosting our businesses. We don't mind if you've got a few pennies, you tend to put it away in effectively a piggy bank. And ISAs are tax-free, good way of saving cash, get about 4% now perhaps. But she wants to redirect a lot of that money into British companies, which makes sense, and she's looking to do the same with pension funds. But one, people like the safety of cash tax-free ISAs, and two, I just don't think we're wired perhaps the same way as some other countries are when it comes to investing in shares.
Not really, no. The Royal Train is to go. The King will bid a fondest of farewells to the Royal Train as it's decommissioned after more than 150 years of service. It's just 9 carriages, which was beloved by Elizabeth II and described as part of national life, will be decommissioned in 2027. The King and their family will continue to travel the UK, but in helicopters.
It's a shame, isn't it? I mean, the trains were nice.
It's
I think
sort of
people
a
look
thing,
forward to
isn't
them.
it?
Yeah, much more glamorous in many ways to see royal family arriving on a train than just coming down in a helicopter. So
but security is probably a real issue now. They've got to put the carriages on the track. It's not always, going up and down to, Euston or Swindon. So they're going to have to, I suppose it's probably quite expensive.
And they are slower. But then what?
And they got rid of the yacht as well, haven't they?
Well, this is it. They got rid of the yacht, but what does the King think about it? I mean, he's very green, isn't he? So presumably he would favour, in an ideal world, using trains over helicopters.
Yeah. Or maybe you can just get, a stand up at the back like everybody else in the heat and catch a normal train.
Yes.
But yeah, we're starting to lose all those bits of royalty. A lot of people would say good. I mean, it's time for it to go. But like you said, there was something elegant and classy about the whole train situation. Let's take a break. Vincent and I will be back in just a moment.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie here with you, and with me is Vincent Moss, former political editor, and we're on the Times now. The NHS will prioritise UK doctors and nurses. A 10-year plan curbs recruitment from overseas. Are we making enough doctors and nurses in this country?
Well, not yet. I mean, the whole reason we have so many overseas health workers, including doctors, is because there aren't enough.
Well, we cut the number of doctors that could be, because it was too expensive.
Right.
It cost $300,000 to train a doctor in this country, whereas you can go and pick one off the shelf in another country and you're just paying them. That's why they cut the courses.
Yeah, so the theory's fine, and Wes Street and the Health Secretary is going to go and prioritise UK doctors and nurses. The same could be said of the building trade and lots of other things where we rely on overseas labour. So, I mean, it's going to be a 10-year plan, and maybe in 10 years' time we might have trained enough, but certainly we're nowhere near at the moment, I don't think.
Well, they're going to have to increase the number of courses. And make sure that there's enough money to train them as junior, or as they want to be called now, resident doctors. They want to be called that, you know. Yeah. So, because a lot of people think that junior doctors literally means junior, but it just means they haven't chosen a specialism. They can be 60 years old and still be a junior doctor, which is a little bit strange. But so this is a plan to get the NHS back on track and to make the use of a 30 billion budget boost in the spending review. But like we said, we've got to play catch up with this. Yeah,
and I think that a lot of this comes down to as well prevention. I mean, Wes Streeting's language a lot is about prevention. There's a rather interesting sentence in this Times story that says work coaches will be stationed in GP surgeries and local NHS chiefs will be given targets to help the sick to return to work. So it has this image of somebody standing exactly in the doctor's surgery saying, well, I think you are fit enough to go back to work, never mind what the doctor says. So it is all very much about prevention. There's again a mention of alcohol pricing again is referenced in this as well. So a bit like the sort of advent of AI, one of the ways the government is determined to cut the spiralling healthcare bill is to just make us fitter and healthier. And it's a laudable aim, but how achievable it is. This follows on from, of course, the supermarket story where they're threatening to police what's in your supermarket trolleys. I
know, and they're saying that they've got to make healthy food more appetising. Why is that the shop's responsibility?
It's hard, isn't it? Because let's be honest, all the good stuff just doesn't taste as nice.
No.
That bag of salad, you're not...
It's not really as exciting as the banoffee pie.
Yes, it is by a long way.
Right, OK, so that's the Times. The Daily Mail. Rebel MPs are set to humiliate the PM. That's at the vote later on today. The attempts to win the welfare bill. So we'll see if there is a humiliation. I don't know. Are you a fan of Wimbledon?
I'm a big tennis fan.
Are you?
Very big tennis fan.
Wow.
So, and it started amazingly today. Super hot temperatures, but all the Brits did well.
There's a whole
Katie
new
Bolter
crop,
won.
isn't there?
Exactly.
A lot of young...
Raducanu and Jack Draper's, of course, there. So we've got I think about 7 Brits won today. So we had a long period where it was just Andy Murray, but we've got a really strong cohort of young Brits going through, and it could be a really, really exciting year, because that famous era of Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, Murray, all sort of over, but we've got this huge new sort of good crop of UK stars, and Sinner and Alcaraz all coming through. So it could be an amazing year at Wimbledon. Very exciting.
Have they got plans for the heat though? I mean, it didn't seem very fair that they're
I think
playing 34. I mean, if somebody has to play in 34 and then somebody's playing in 20.
Yeah,
it's
tough.
Fair,
it's not fair, but they have these big sort of ice towels they put around their neck and the umbrellas and stuff. And I think Alcaraz helped actually a spectator that was overcome by the heat today. So it's just as risky, I think, to go and watching the heat. So,
Yeah,
so if you're playing
would
4
be
or 5
brutal.
hour matches, I mean, that's really tough in the heat, isn't it?
That is brutal, actually. That's really, really brutal. The I newspaper, so number 10 in final push to win over Rebel MPs ahead of welfare vote. Some of them are saying that absolutely they won't be won over. So
they're not, but he's got a big majority, and it looks as though he's reduced the number of rebels enough to win the vote. That's according to what the Labour business managers think, but who knows?
Yeah, but the thing is, and it says it here, I was going to bring this up when we were talking about it a little bit before, is that emboldened welfare rebels now seeking an end to the 2-child benefit cap, which will cost $3.4 billion in the first year.
This is the thing, now they've broken their duck, they're going
to keep pushing.
Every controversial policy the government tries to push through from their point of view, they will oppose.
They know he's weakened, and that is the thing, isn't it? It's not going to, it's really not going to be very easy for him going forward now. And Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall tells MPs that concessions will cost taxpayers $2.5 billion. And it's really unfair, actually, to what they're doing as well, is pitting the taxpayer against. Yeah. That's what they're hoping for, is the taxpayer gets so fed up that they fight their battles for them, which is completely unfair. The Daily Express, BBC boss has to act now or resign. I mean, it's safe to remember that Tim Davie has been the boss of the BBC over quite a few scandals now, not least Hugh Edwards. And Hugh Edwards has thrown up the middle finger about them getting their money back, which I don't blame him. I mean, they paid him. And they said, can we have it back, please? And he's gone, no, I'll never work again. I mean, I know it's his fault, but he'll never work again, and he needs that money. So Tim Davie really, and all the Strictly Dancing bullying thing as well, he was the boss through all of that. There's bullying claims now on BBC Breakfast. There's all sorts of stuff going on at the BBC, and he has presided over all of it. Do you think his days are possibly numbered because of this?
It's difficult. I mean, it's not helped by the fact that this row over Glastonbury, he was actually there visiting staff for a period
of course he was. Get on a freebie.
On the Saturday. But there's an old cliche, isn't there, about deputy heads must roll. So, but I think on this occasion it's a particularly tricky one for him, because I think he was consulted on this decision over this controversial rapper and the things he said. I mean, the BBC did do the right thing in terms of pulling it off the sort of the iPlayer and things like that, but I think the thing is it was up there too long, and the argument is they should have pulled the plug on this controversial act immediately, and they didn't do it. Now, I'm not sure technically how easy that is, but I'm not a broadcast expert, but I think they've already admitted they're wrong. But there are so many sort of people who are, for one reason or another, not fans of the BBC. That we've seen the all defund the BBC issues rising again. So he'll be under pressure, and we'll have to come up with answers for the regulator, Ofcom, and for others, I suspect. Yeah,
because I mean the BBC, although it's only recently gone under Ofcom, it's really the BBC Trust that oversees the BBC behaviour, and only if the BBC Trust doesn't give you a good enough answer can you then take it to Ofcom. So it doesn't go direct. The BBC doesn't go directly to Ofcom as Talk would. If I did something wrong, that would go directly to Ofcom. The BBC has latitude to handle it themselves internally, and only if that is not satisfactory can it then be applied. Can it then be sent to Ofcom? So I'd be interested to see under what mechanism Ofcom has wheedled its way in there. I mean, I know that from working there.
And it'd be tricky for them as well. I think the questions will be asked about how much did they suspect that this controversial rapper was going to say what he was going to say.
Glastonbury is controversial. I mean, they were putting up images of what they were calling fascist broadcasters and things like that. So, I mean, that's what they do. Yeah, that's what they do.
And there's a strong argument for freedom of expression in the creative industry. So, and
I suppose it's just that death to is a call to violence.
I think it's the inciting of violence.
It is. But how do you? I'm just troubled by how do you incite violence against a military force as opposed to a people? So this wasn't death to Jews. This was death to the IDF. Which is, again, incredibly specific. I'd like to see that broken down more for me, to explain that to me. because I'm not sure about that. I'm a bit confused. Not for the first time in my life, but there you go. The Guardian, Labour bid to woo rebels descends into chaos on the eve of the welfare vote. Police open inquiry into rap duo and Kneecap, who was already in trouble, I think, anyway. And Ukraine's unwitting suicide bombers. What? Ole found the job via a Telegram channel offering a day's work and side gigs. It sounded easy enough. He was to travel from his home in eastern Ukraine to the western city of Ravine, pick up a rucksack. Is this by Russia? Must be.
Yes, organised by Russian intelligence. So it looks as though they're trying to persuade people to get what looks like a delivery job, and then turns out you're given an explosive device and expected to be a suicide bomber.
Good heavens. That's extraordinary, isn't it?
It is.
So he opened his bag outside the police station. Instead of a paint canister, he saw something that looked like a homemade bomb. The device, had it exploded, would have made Ole an unwitting suicide bomber and part of a sinister new trend of attacks inside Ukraine that the security agency, the SBU, said were originated by Russian intelligence officers. Gosh, what a world we live in. Let's take a break and we'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and with me, Vincent Moss, former political editor, going through Tuesday's newspapers. The Sun newspaper said, delivery scandal. Did somebody say just nicked? Cops raid on migrant riders after Sun expose. Now, this was the Sun that discovered that there were many people who were who have been delivering in these fast food delivery apps, who actually were not entitled to be working, that they were staying in migrant hotels and didn't yet have a right to work. However, isn't it the company that employs them that's breaking the law, or is it both of them?
Well, I think the big issue has been that the way you can get a job with one of these firms and just let somebody else do your job, and you can trade, if you like, the license or whatever the permit is to do it. And
apparently it's really easy to do it. You just go online, fill in a form, and the next 5 minutes you've got an app and you're allowed to start working.
Exactly.
There's
and
no
then,
checks.
And then there's all the social media sites where you then advertise that. And one of the things that's been a problem is on social media that would-be migrants to the UK have been told, come here, you get a electric bike really easily, and you'll be working straight away. And because the sort of swappability, which I think the government is going to crack down on, of these permits, if you like, loads of people have been able to work illegally and work for such firms as the Sun is claiming Just Eat, and there was a crackdown on it, and that needs to stop really. And the Home Secretary's actually praised the Sun campaign on its front page, saying the Sun campaign to shine a spotlight on this has been, she commends it, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, because it does seem to be rather prevalent. I've noticed in my bit of London, for example, even in the heat wave, a lot of these drivers are riders, they're mainly on e-bikes or scooters or bicycles, wear balaclavas. And you think, well, why are you wearing a balaclava? And a lot of that is to conceal identity, but because quite a lot of them, or large proportion of them, are potentially working without permission. And there have been claims that if you go to some of the migrant hostels, you will see e-bikes outside, and you'll see the delivery bags of some of these well-known companies, and why would they be there if they weren't working illegally? So it does seem to be a problem, and it is part of the alleged lure that brings people to the UK, is that they can come here and work illegally and pick up these kind of jobs. So the government said it will deal with it. I think it's probably, the Sun seems to be saying that very much the onus should be on these firms to be dealing with the problem as well.
I mean, they should be being fined, what, £5,000 per person?
Yeah.
That they are bringing. That was the whole point of those fines.
Yes.
But I mean, the other thing is that presumably through these apps, they will be paying tax and national insurance, oddly, even though they wouldn't, you know, they will be paying tax and national insurance because it will be taken off them at the earning source.
I think for the legitimate users, it's fine. It's the fact that these licences and permits are being effectively traded illegally and being offered to other people, and quite what financial arrangement they get from the main holder, if you like, of the permit, who knows. But it's clearly a loophole, an employment loophole that is being exploited by illegal migrants to work here.
I mean, yeah, certainly if it's acting as that kind of magnet, as a draw, then that should be stopped. But the other way of dealing with this is to let them work, take the tax and the national insurance, as they will be paying, and get them to pay towards their accommodation.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're going to do it anyway.
Especially in...
let them pay for their accommodation.
Yeah, especially in industries where there are labour shortages.
Yeah.
Which there are, for example, in
in
hospitality,
farms
the building
and
trade, fruit picking, all those sort of things.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe there is something in that, although the government have always refused to do that because of the fact that it could act as a magnet for people. But if they're at the moment getting the best of both worlds, I say charge them for their accommodation. That takes the burden off the taxpayer. Maybe, who knows. The Daily Star. You ain't seen nothing sweat. Sweltering Britain is going to face 40 degrees of heat as temperatures soar once again to record-breaking highs later this month. Okay, so we've got. I just want to have a look at my trusty weather app. Actually, I'm not sure I get. Oh no, I have got some Wi-Fi here. All right. So today, Tuesday, we're looking at I've got old money. I've got it in the old money because I can't do the new money stuff. But it drops on Wednesday, and then stays in the sort of 70s. What's that in what young people's money? I don't know.
20-something.
20-somethings. I still can't do it. And then it stays pretty low for a while. I mean, we can't do 40, can we?
No, I mean, it's predicted Tuesday, I think, to go to 33 in London, and I have seen predictions of 34, 35, but the Star is predicting, without saying exactly when, 40 degrees. That's really hot. That's like what's happening in the Mediterranean now. That really would be far too hot. So hopefully it doesn't go that high. but that's their prediction for a record-breaking summer temperature. But that really would be super high. I can't remember what the record is. I thought it was 38, 39.
So, yeah, I think it's 38, 39. But, I mean, I don't know. People are not going to cope with that. We don't do well.
No, we don't.
We don't do
it's
well
already
with this.
pretty hot in the south, although it's going to be cooler, isn't it, in the next couple of days? North-south divide, I think it's going to be a bit cooler up north, but still going to be very hot down here for the next couple of days.
This is why I planted my garden like a jungle. I've got banana trees, I've got yucca, I've got everything is a jungle plant, doing brilliantly.
All those things that we were told would never grow in the UK that are now growing here. People are growing oranges and
I've
lemons.
Got fern and I've got grasses and I've got all of that and all of these palms and things like that in my garden. And they're doing brilliantly.
And that's now why we're a wine-producing nation, isn't it? It's crazy, isn't it? So we've got what's going to be a Mediterranean climate, the way things are going.
I mean, I don't think my banana trees will ever have any fruit, but it's having babies again. So I've got 9 banana trees now.
That is good.
Yeah, really good. And they're just thriving in this kind of climate. It's perfect.
It's mad, isn't it? So out with potatoes and carrots, in with oranges, lemons, bananas.
Exactly.
Soon have
mangoes. I mean, literally, there isn't a British plant, if you like. It's jasmine. I've got one big jasmine bush in the garden, which just smells gorgeous. I'm not getting rid of that. But everything else is grapevines. I get fantastic grapes every year. Yeah, and all my tropical plants. It's just, I thought, I'm not going to bother with anything else.
It's crazy how things have changed, isn't it, what you can grow now?
Yeah, and I just watch them now and they're all going, oh, we love it here. It's nice.
And the strawberries this year, I know it's a Wimbledon thing, but the strawberries this year are pretty cheap and taste really, really nice.
Yeah, because of the weather that we've had. The only problem is, of course, is in watering.
Yeah.
Is in watering anything. I don't know if we've got hosepipe bans yet.
Not yet. I think it's keep
coming,
them watered until it comes. It can't be far off at this rate.
It can't be far off at this rate. But like I said before, I do have water butts, so I can.
Good move.
I'm keeping them for when the hosepipe ban comes, because up until then I can use water, but after that it's going to have to be, I'm going to have to save all that water because there's been no rain. So you ain't seen nothing sweat. People at weekends, what's so great about it actually, people at weekends leave London.
Yes.
They all go away. It's nice.
Nice and quiet.
Yeah, they all disappear and they all go to some poor beachfront somewhere that's having to deal with hundreds of sweaty, burnt tourists heading there. Have you been down to Cornwall yet?
I have, but I haven't been when the weather's been this nice, so I need to go down when it's a bit nice. Although Cornwall can get really, really crowded, but it has got Britain's best beaches, I would say that.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah. My father was a Cornishman.
Yeah.
No, I love Cornwall. It's absolutely stunning. The mirror for Tuesday. Britain bakes, heat highs and more to come as stars hit Wimbledon. Oh, that rhymes. So obviously Cliff Richard's there. He goes there every year, doesn't he? Didn't he end up singing one year?
He did end up, I think, in a rain break, yes.
Yeah. I don't know who that is. But
David Beckham was there with his mum, I think.
That's David Beckham.
Joanna Lumley.
Joanna Lumley, bless her. She was there with some wine. And I was listening earlier on to the news, and people were told not to join the queue at Wimbledon. Because there's always a massive queue for Wimbledon, and people were instructed not to join the queue, that it was so big that they weren't going to get in, and it was too hot.
Yeah. And there's no cover, I think. It's just out on a grassy area. So even people with tents and things, some people started to join the queue and left because it was just way too hot. And I think if you go back later in the evening and join that queue, people leave a bit early and you can get some tickets then. But yeah, it's just way too hot, and it's going to be hot again there tomorrow. So another really hot day.
It's going to be, I expect that they'll be happy at Wimbledon because at least people have to buy water for about £20 a bottle.
And very expensive pins.
Do you go to Wimbledon?
I do go, yes. But they do let you take in some of your own things. I think you're allowed to take in a bottle of wine or something.
Do you not secrete stuff about your person?
I think, no, they search you, like a lot of these sporting events.
Well, I once bought a friend of mine a handbag that was actually wine, but it was designed on the outside to look like a handbag.
That's very clever.
Yeah.
That would do very well at Wimbledon.
Wouldn't that?
tomorrow.
You'd have to look a
Yes.
bit, you know, with your handbag, Vincent. But yeah, it was just, and it looked like a handbag. It had one of those bags of wine in it.
That's good.
Yeah, perfect gift. Perfect gift. Vincent, thank you. It's
Pleasure.
good to see you. Right, coming up, it's just you and it is me, and we're going to be talking about Britain's welfare state and the fact that it is in a state. It doesn't seem to really benefit anyone. Why is it that we just keep lurching from, I don't know, disaster to disaster with the welfare state? People who are on it are saying that it doesn't really help them. People who want to get on it can't get on it because they've got the wrong, I don't know, hair colour or something. It doesn't seem to work very well for anybody. So I'd like to hear from you as to what your experience has been about getting on welfare, getting some help. Are you made to feel that you're, you know, stealing money from the taxpayer, which you shouldn't be made to feel? Or does it genuinely feel like the perfect safety net that it was always designed to be? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It is fabulous to have your company, especially if you're one of those people who in this heat is failing to sleep. So welcome to the programme if you're new to it. We'll try and cool you down. I have to say this room that I'm in is incredibly well air conditioned, but don't be fooled. This isn't for me. It's for all the technology that's in here. They don't really, the presenters, no, they don't care about us being cool. They just need to keep all the equipment and TV screens cool. So whilst I'm basking in its loveliness, I know that it is not really for me. So listen, if you're awake because of the heat, it would be lovely to have your company for the next hour. And I want to talk to you about welfare because this has become a really thorny issue. Now we know that Rachel Reeves, Rachel from Accounts, wanted to cut $5 billion off the welfare budget, particularly targeting disability payments and PIP payments. And it was done just as a sort of an arbitrary, well, we need 5 billion, let's just take it off there. I think she thought that it would be popular. It proved not to be, particularly with the Labour backbenchers. So they all rebelled. It was up to about 128 Labour MPs rebelled, which left Keir Starmer looking like a fool. It also left him with the very real possibility of the Tories rescuing him on this welfare bill, which is not a risk he wanted to take. And also, he didn't want to risk, with this massive majority that he's got, the potential of losing. And he probably wouldn't have lost, but it would have really damaged him. So he said, well, I was busy. I didn't really look at it, but I'm paraphrasing now. He suggested that actually what had happened was that he was focusing on the recent G7 and NATO summits, as well as the brief war between Israel and Iran. He said, I turned my attention fully to it. And when I got back from NATO on Wednesday night, obviously in the course of the early part of this week, we were busy trying to make sure NATO was a success. So, in other words, oops, I was looking the other way, which is bogus, right? We know that that's bogus. But everyone's saying it's another U-turn. It is one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that democracy worked in this case. That is, backbenchers decided that they weren't going to follow the whip. They weren't just going to do what was expected of them by their leader. And they were going to stand up and say, this is not what we want. So things have changed. We don't know until later on today what changes were made. We know a few of them, but not many of the actual changes that were made to this bill. But basically, the savings have gone from a potential 5 billion to 2.5 billion, so it's halved, which means that Rachel Reeves is going to have to come back to us for more tax at some point. Now, what I was thinking about when I saw this is what a mess the welfare state is. I mean, come on, let's be honest. It's a clusterfudge, isn't it? It really is. It is a mess. It doesn't seem that it serves anybody particularly well. I mean, we hear stories about people that, you know, have 3 holidays abroad every year and brand new televisions and new cars, and they're on welfare. I don't know how many people for whom this works that well for, but I do know a lot of other people who have either been freelance or they've been, they've hit hard times, whatever. And they haven't been able to really get any help at all from the welfare state. And worse, that if they go to the welfare state and ask for some help, that they're made to feel like they're begging. And this is something we all pay into. But society, I don't know how, but we seem to have chosen to vilify people who are on welfare. People who are on it for maybe a year or maybe 2 years, while some issues are happening in their life or whatever. And this is because we've all been turned into looking at welfare claimants as thieves and scumbags and villains. By sort of, right-wing commentators. And it was always intended to be a dignified support mechanism for people who find themselves in a difficult situation, right? That's what it was intended for. So that if you lost your job, you could immediately go to the welfare system that you've paid into, by the way. So you're only taking out, many people are only taking out what they've put in, and be helped, be held up, be supported while the troubles ebb and apparently you get back into work. That is kind of the whole point of this. But there seems to be a big issue with welfare and our reaction to it. And it's an interesting one because I lived for quite a few years on and off in Germany, And it was never, nobody was ever made to feel like that. It was never, there was no shame attached to using the benefit system if you needed it. There didn't seem to be that whole thing that you would feel embarrassed to go into an unemployment office, or you'd feel, you know, somebody looking down on you. I've heard so many stories doing phone-ins of people who've been made to feel like scumbags when they've gone in to ask for some assistance or some support, and they've been practically told that they're lying about the situation that they're in and made to feel less than. That is not the point. The point of welfare is to be a safety net into which you pay. But it's all gone wrong. I mean, in countries like France as well, it's there to support you, it's there to help you. But a lot of these countries that are ahead of us, they pay more in tax. They pay quite considerably more in tax, but what they get for that is so much better and so much cleaner. And in these countries that spend a greater proportion of GDP on social enterprise, there is a better standard of living. Now, if somebody could say to me, if you pay more tax, and look, we're the most taxed we've ever been, right? If you pay more tax, you know, in Germany, for example, you get something like 60% of your final salary for the first year or two, and then it incrementally goes down. So you're not dropping off a cliff. You're not going from earning a decent salary to, you know, 20 quid a week on benefits. That you are supported in that moment of, I don't know, disaster happening in your life. And there seems to be an attitude in this country that if you're not working, you're faking. That if you haven't got a job, you're bludging. But that doesn't seem to be the case in other countries, because the welfare system is supported by higher tax, and because it's supported by higher taxation, people value it more. And there's not that connection that we have with, oh, look at that scumbag over there who's on benefits. So I'm just interested. France actually is the country most committed to social benefits. They spend a third of their GDP on social services. It's extraordinary. Scandinavian countries appear high up the ranking, with Denmark, Sweden and Norway all spending more than 25%. But they also provide a better standard of living. So would you, the trouble is, I don't trust this government, I don't trust any of the governments in this country to spend our money properly. We've seen far too much wasted. But I want a better system for everybody. I'd like everybody, even if I never use it, that would mean I'd be quite lucky, right? I'd quite like people I've never met before and will never meet in my life to have a decent standard of living. And that is really unpopular, apparently. That makes you a liberal, tree-hugging socialist. But I don't see that there's much wrong with wanting people in this country to have a decent life. Do you? So, yes, I could be persuaded to spend more on tax if I could be guaranteed that that money wouldn't just be flushed down the nearest toilet. Because I would like a system where people didn't fall off a cliff financially if they lost their jobs. I would like a system where people weren't treated like pariahs when they go in to ask for support that they've paid into. I would like a system where there isn't extreme poverty even after the welfare state has stepped in. Be nice. Wouldn't you? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Let me speak to Brian, who's in Whitley Bay. That's a nice part of the world. It must be lovely at the moment, Brian.
Hiya, Petrie. Absolutely fantastic.
I bet.
It is. It's a really nice part of the world. I'm really, proud of being from Whitley Bay. It's a great place.
Beautiful place. Let's talk about benefits,
holidays,
though.
by the way, have you?
Huh?
Have you been here for a holiday?
Yes, in my youth. Yeah, obviously. That's when we always did the seaside and up in Scotland as well, and up north. It was lovely.
Yeah,
Loved it.
we used to get a lot of people from Scotland. Well, I know they go to Blackpool, but they used to come over to Whitley Bay because it's just over the border kind of thing. But
it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice place. I was just thinking, disability, the PIP.
Yeah.
To me, I think it's been oversubscribed, to be honest with you, because I know this might sound harsh, but I do not class people with anxiety as a disability. It's more of a condition, because you're not born with it. You can actually be treated with it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Through medication and various other things. I think what they need to do with PIP is change it back to the word disability living allowance, because I think I've got a friend and she was telling me how you get assessed is, it's on your home life, how are you able to cook a meal yourself, can you use a pan, I know it sounds ridiculous, but asking are you able to use pans and can you actually carry food off a cooker, sort of thing, do you know what I mean, onto a bench. There's all to do with living skills, and somebody with anxiety, they, in my opinion, they don't really, have them kind of problems.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I looked at a PIP form the other day just to remind myself, because I filled one in for my brother, but. Yeah. And it's very specific things like, do you need to be reminded to use the bathroom? Can you use the bathroom on your own? Do you need somebody practically almost to clean you after you've used the bath? It's very strict criteria. So I'm confused, like you, that so many people with non-physical disabilities are still able to claim PIP, because much of it is to do with physicality. Like you say, are you able to cook either using an oven or a microwave? Well, if you're anxious, yes.
Yeah, I know another person, no names, no actual. I know another person who's drunk a lot, and he's said he's got depression, and I see him about, he goes to the gym and everything, and he gets blinking PIP, and he's like, can physically walk, he can lift weights, he can go and lift, use machine weights. So I just do not understand. Because I thought disability, I'm thinking there are people who've got, spina bifida, people who are wheelchair users who find it difficult to get in and out of a bath and have to have a hoist or whatever, or they've got support workers coming in. That's what I thought disability living allowance or PIP was for, them kind of people to get support and help. Not somebody who wants a bit of extra money in the back pockets. And on another radio station, a lady rang up who was a teacher, and she said she had ADHD, and said, I might apply for PIP. And I was disgusted. I thought, you're in a profession, why do you need that to apply for that money when that could be for somebody else who's, got serious disabilities, like physical or,
Yeah, I agree, because there's also, this social contract, I was just talking about, the fact that in this society there is an odd attitude of, if it's there, I'll take it. And it's like, well, you're not just taking it from the government, you're taking it from me, and you're taking it from Brian, and you're taking it from other people. You're taking it from people who might actually need it. And I'm with you. I think that general anxiety disorders, while they can be crippling, right? There's no emotionally crippling. They're not physically stopping you from going to the bathroom.
Absolutely, and that's why it should be redefined. And I think, sadly, it's gone a bit badly wrong for the Labour Party. But I can remember, when the Tories were back in, and I remember people who were disabled ringing your show, worried, about Jeremy Hunt. They were absolutely terrified about losing the PIP, because he had massive reforms with the benefits. I remember people were terrified ringing your show. So in one sense, I am glad that Labour's got in, to protect those people who are absolutely frightened out of their lives, for losing the benefit. But I think over the years, it's been oversubscribed with people who say they've got anxiety or ADHD or...
Yeah, 1,000 people a day.
Good God.
I think are accepted, yeah.
It's absolutely nuts.
I mean, that
to be
is
honest with you.
bonkers, isn't it?
It is. It's just ridiculous. I mean, everybody seems to be jumping on the bandwagon now. Do you know what I mean? I mean, like, you know, I don't know much about autism, to be honest with you, but I do know, you know, that you know, people with support, they can actually cook. You know what I mean? If they have somebody, you know, in the family helping them and that, you know what I mean? They can pick a pan up surely, do you know what I mean, and move things around and that, you know what I mean? It's not as if somebody's blind or...
Well, there are ranges, aren't there? There are ranges. And also, you know, somebody with generalised anxiety, okay, or depression may, for a short time, not be able to, they might need to be reminded to eat, so they might need to be reminded to, you know, but that can be solved. Like you said, it's not something that is an ongoing situation and shouldn't be. And so that's what we need to do, is help those people sort that out so they don't need to be reminded to eat, that it's do you see what I mean? That they can start living a fairly normal life.
You know, if I was in bed one day and I was depressed and I couldn't be bothered to get out of bed and to do food for myself and that, it doesn't mean I'm going to be like that every single day. You know, you've got to get out and go do your shopping and stuff. And, you know, like I said, the people who, in my mind, the word disability, living allowance daily, when it used to be called that, that kind of puts me in mind of my friend who's a wheelchair user, and she finds it, you know, difficult to get around, you know, because obviously, you know, she needs that support. She has a person coming in to help her shopping, going shopping with her, you know, that's the kind of criteria for, you know, that's what it should be aimed at, not like someone who's decided they've got autism, or, because you can't really, to be honest with you, you know, there's different degrees, isn't there, when it comes to people with like anxiety, and that some people can be severe. You know what I mean? But they can get help with the right medication and treatment. Sorry, we're talking too fast.
No, you're not at all. I love it.
Treatment, you know. But I just think disability, in my mind, is physical, not really like, you know, like psychological, because it can be like helped with the right medication and support, I think. You know.
Yeah, I mean, when parity was drawn, it was a massive step forward for people who suffer with mental health illnesses. But this is just a sticking plaster. The PIP and benefits are just a sticking plaster, because if somebody goes with, I don't know, with a mental health condition, and you say, well, okay, here's some benefits, how does that help them? I mean, it doesn't help them, because also part of depression is shutting yourself away and perhaps not working. You know, getting a job is more than just about earning money. It's about getting out of the house. It's about meeting people. It's about all of those things as well. So just I think giving somebody benefits with a mental health condition is the worst thing for them. They need help, and that's where we're falling down. We're not providing the mental health services to help people so they don't have to take benefits.
I'm with you 100%, absolutely.
Yeah.
On that.
But it's not working for anyone, is it, the welfare state? It doesn't seem.
Well, no. I mean, you know, on the flip side, I mean, I can't remember his name now. You know, the guy who was in the Tory party who changed all the benefits around and he brought a universal
Ian Duncan Smith.
Yeah, I think universal credit, I think it's just like changed on the back of a sofa. I just think, you know, when they had income support, I don't know what the other ones are called, you know, I just feel like
there were loads and loads of different benefits, weren't there? And he pulled them all into one.
I just feel, you know, that the universal credit, you know, people who are on that, you know, it's just ridiculous money, because I mean, the cost of living, and I don't know how much it is. I would love to know what a single person gets on universal credit. I can't imagine it'd be very much, but you know, I just feel for them people, because obviously, you know, it's I don't know.
Yeah, single men particularly, I think don't do very well on out of welfare, and it's interesting, Brian, because we hear about all these people who are making so much money and they have all these holidays, and yet actually when you dig down and you see what you get if you suddenly lose your job, it's not very much at all, and you have to fight for every single penny of it. So it doesn't work. It's supposed to be a safety net, and it isn't.
Yeah. Do you know what frightens me though, Petrie? I keep on hearing AI is going to take all these jobs over, and AI is going to do, and that means there's more people going to be able to work. How's the benefit system going to manage it? Because people need money to buy food, don't they? So how's that going to work if AI is going to take over all of the jobs? It's quite scary, isn't it?
They'll have to. Every government will have to come up with what's known as a universal income. So
Yeah,
everyone will get everyone will get 10 grand a year or whatever, but it's not going to be enough to live on.
No, it is frightening in the future, isn't it?
Yeah. At least I'm so old I don't really care about it.
Yeah.
Selfishly, I'll be gone by then, so it'll be fine. But
Yeah.
I don't know, Brian. It is, the benefit system is just going to grow and grow and grow, and I just wonder if it's something we need to accept and pay more into it, make it work.
Maybe they brought some kind of food stamps out for certain people. I don't know, to give them more like stamps so they can't spend it on alcohol and cigarettes or whatever. I mean, they can now take a voucher to it, or even put a prepaid debit card where they can go to a supermarket and buy food instead of just squandering on flashy TVs and flashy, mobile phones.
It's been said before, it's been mooted before actually, that is a system that should be done, but it's been fought every step of the way for being inhumane.
Well, I can't see how it can, because if you need money for food, that's the most important thing. So to me, if they give you more money on a card where you can't go and buy a TV with it, or you
go
can
on holiday
feed your family, then actually buy the right things that you need instead of like buying posh phones or whatever, and I think it's that's how it should be. I mean, to help you with your family and stuff. So yeah, if you had it on a card, then people wouldn't have to they can only take to a certain supermarket and it's only for food only. That would be a better thing, I think, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, except that people who are on benefits think that it's an absolutely outrageous idea, that it's disgusting and that it infantilises them and it takes away their civil rights and all of that. It has been talked about for many years. While I've been a broadcaster, I've talked about it before.
Yeah.
But I just think it would be really unpopular. But a lot of people want that. They say, look, this is a system that could work. Some of it in cash, the rest of it in cards, so you pay your gas and electricity and get your food, and that's it. But we'll see.
I know that food stamps in America, don't they? They get a lot of in America. Welfare, they get food stamps. So I don't know how it works over there.
For now, but they are going to cut that in the one big outrageous bill. So they're going to cut those down. I know. Brian, it's lovely to talk to you. Enjoy Whitley Bay, and if you're thinking of a staycation, head there. It is absolutely gorgeous. I've got to take a break, but I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is...
Hello there, this is Talk and it's Petrie, and we're talking about the welfare state and the state of the welfare state, because it is in a state right? It doesn't really, in my view, appear to work for anybody. I mean, you've got people who are on benefits, who are in poverty, who still go to food banks and things like that. You've got people who are newly unemployed trying to get benefits that they're told that they can't get, or it's so woefully little that they can't possibly survive on. You've got the taxpayer being told that it's costing nearly 100 billion a year of taxpayers' money to support this welfare system, but it doesn't seem to work. Does it actually work? I mean, I'm not on it. I've never been on it, so I would love to hear from you if you've ever needed support, if you've ever asked for support, if you've ever, found yourself in a difficult situation and you've needed some welfare help. Was it there for you? Was it the lovely safety net that we were sold? Because society is really now treating everybody that's on welfare and on benefits as thieving scumbags. And yeah, I know that's right-wing commentators who always point to the one person in a town that's got a new Bentley because they've been on benefits for 6 years or whatever. But it doesn't seem to work. It doesn't work because people are able to scam it easily. It doesn't work when people need it. It doesn't seem to work if you want it. So what actually is that 100 billion for? And if we look at the polling on this, the net majority of people suggest that more money should be spent on the welfare state. And I don't disagree with that, in the sense that if we're going to have a system, let's at least make it work for everybody, right? Otherwise, what's the point? It doesn't make any sense to me. Spending all these billions and we've still got, poverty and people, food, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem to work. Isn't it time we called it out and just said this is an absolute abomination? Anyway, give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Sarah is in Liverpool. Hello, Sarah, how are you?
Good morning, Petrie. How are you? I'm fine.
I'm all right. You coping with the heat?
Well, we've got a nice cool breeze coming in off Liverpool Bay.
Oh, of course you have. Of course you have.
Our own dose of our own nice, the equivalent of the Fremantle Doctor. It's just come in. It's nice. It's better than roast. I mean, I think they're going to change the name of London from the smoke to the roast.
Yeah, to the sweat. It's really hot here. It's really hot here. But anyway, what do we think about the welfare state as it is?
As it is, speaking as somebody who, through no fault of their own, is a recipient, mine is through industrial injuries. And the last time I had a holiday, before anybody says anything, was when Pulplas played the Pyramid Stage, which was about 99.
Yeah.
And that was when I was in work. So all that stuff about, they have Bentleys, they go on holidays 5 times a year, they have flash mobile phones and tellies and whatever. That is the 0.03. Maybe 0.04%.
Who are scamming.
From the DWP, their figures who scam. Everybody else is flat broke and literally is, buddy, can you spare a dime? Believe you and me. And if you are sick and disabled, it costs you 4 to 8 times as much to live. I know that because I'm paying a pile of medical bills and I am absolutely broke. Believe you and me, because if I didn't, I wouldn't get I wouldn't get an end to the treatments I need to actually live. So anyone who says that, they can just send them to me and I'll put them straight. And
so the system if the system is failing you, and it is failing so many people, why are we still buying into the system as it is?
Well, you see, the problem is, the one thing most people don't really realise, that at the heart of the welfare state, it was, as we all know, the father of the welfare state was Beveridge. However, what most people don't realise, and I know this from my university days, is that when he was asked how you treat the sick and the disabled, he said, let them starve. And at the heart of the welfare state, people don't realise that Beveridge was a eugenicist. He's on record, you can check it out. Progress and Barbarism by Clive Ponting, also Genome by Matt Ridley, and also The War Against Disabled People by Ellen Clifford. Check those out. Anyone who wants to check, they certainly can. And he was a rampant eugenicist, and the reason why the welfare state is the way it is that's at the heart of it. It's also the reason why people who are poor, sick, disabled get treated like dirt in this country, because at the heart of politics there is social eugenics, where they basically, to use a shorthand, the government played the haves against the have-nots and the all-right jacks against those who were skint. That's quite simple. The problem is, a lot of people in this country, they want a welfare state that's similar to Scandinavia, that works. However, what they forget is in Scandinavia, they pay higher taxes. Ours is basically a race to the bottom, which is totally wrong, because look at the way the country is. And then if you do...
Because we're not traditionally a socialist country, are we? France is, Germany is. There's a social contract between...
and a social conscience as well.
Yeah, there is definitely a social conscience, that people do genuinely want other people to have a decent standard of living.
That's it. And at the heart, this is the reason why Britain is the way we are, why it's been divide and rule for years. Also, you have to bear in mind that this is the home of eugenic thought, with Francis Galton and all the rest of them, and the likes of H.G. Wells and all the rest of those who were, and also the father of statistics, who basically thought, right, this is basically anybody who is not like us in the I'm all right Jack camp, to use a very crude shorthand, anybody who doesn't look like us, doesn't is not as well off as us, or who is as, who lives in a nice house like us, we have the right now, because we can corrupt the theory of evolution to say, yes, well, this is the reason why these people are there, and we should go and do this. It's also the reason why we ended up with the Mental Incapacity Act in 1913, which is why anybody who was sick, who was disabled in any way, or whether it's physical, mental, or whatever, were locked away, and why they were basically glorified concentration camps. And it was only I think it was about the 80s, when Margaret Thatcher let people out, that you start seeing people who are disabled more in society, and why we are. I mean,
you still had unmarried mothers being institutionalised in the 1970s.
Again, yeah, that was it. That was again to do with social eugenics. That was all. That's what it was all boiled down to. Forget all the nice little hangers, the little hooks they wanted to hang. Oh, we're going to hang it on this hook or that hook or the other hook. It had nothing at all to do with that. It was social eugenics. Boil it right down. And this is the reason why our welfare systems in the state is that's 50% of the reason. The other 50% is the fact that they decided, I can't remember if it was Blair or whether it was Cameron, they decided to farm part of it out to a private company, ASOS. And within that, now I know this because I know friends of mine who work...
Well, that's where they set up all those centres, wasn't it, to have people having to go in and be assessed by non-medical people.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it used to be medical people.
It was a French company, actually.
Yeah, it was ASOS. And believe you and me, they are the bane of anybody who's sick and disabled's life. And come to think of it, anybody who's just fell on hard times, their life too. Because when they assess people, especially if they're sick and disabled, what they do is they go through, and if you've never filled out these forms before, it is, believe you me, you need to be a Philadelphia lawyer. You have to make sure, if you're going for, say, sickness benefit, it's not your fault you've got sick. You put it in, you write it all out. Now, at one time, they used to say to you when you walked in, made to feel like you were going cap in hand. And it is a horrible feeling. You feel humiliated every time you took a sick note in. What they said was to you, as soon as you walk through the door, right, this is what you need to claim. First off, you need to have income support, because it takes 6 to 8 weeks for the what used to be incapacity to come through. So have that form, fill them out, make sure you fill them out properly, and put in any, and if you, for the sickness part, for the incapacity, put in any evidence you've got. Okay, so that means doctor's letters, diaries, symptoms, medication, whatever. And you'd have to make sure that it all tallied up with what was down at the doctor's. Then, ASOS took over. And you notice the difference. Because when you went for an assessment, I mean, we've got one, there's one not far from where I live, and it's nicknamed by ours Lourdes, because even if you've got terminal cancer, they will say that there is nothing wrong with you and you're cured, even though you've got 6 weeks to live. That's how bad it is. And the reason
they were paid to pass people, weren't they? That was the downfall of that system. I mean, well, that's what I mean, to say that they were fit. They were paid. Yeah, the more people that they said were fit enough to work, the more money they got.
Yeah, they got an extra, I think it was 25 quid, something like that. And I know a friend of mine who worked in the office where they did this, and they'd hear the people cheer every time they knocked somebody back who was desperately ill. And as I said before, there's only 0.3 to 0.03 to 0.04% of people who are faking.
Scamming.
Everybody else is kosher. So anybody who says that they're not, believe you and me, they are really living in cloud cuckoo land. They've been reading too much of Nigel Farage's tweets and whatever else. And come to think of it, I think it is Starmer's as well. And this is why we've got this problem, because people don't want to believe the evidence in front of their eyes. It's like with the previous caller when he was saying about people who are autistic. Now, I've got a cousin who's autistic.
But there's a range. I mean, what Brian was saying, there's a range. And by the way, we think it's Atos, not ASOS.
ASOS, I mean, I meant Atos, sorry, my mistake.
No, that's all right. I just want to make sure we don't get sued by a clothing organisation.
Mind you, with this shower, I wouldn't put it past them. But you see, the thing is, people think, if you're disabled, you're born with a disability. Anybody can acquire a disability at any time in their life. And if anybody says, because you've acquired it, you shouldn't have it, which was sort of Brian's implication, that's wrong. Now, for me, the way my right side is getting more and more impaired by the day. But yet, if I was to put in for PIP, I'd still get treated like dirt, even though...
that's where it's wrong to me.
That is where it's wrong.
That's Sarah, I'm going to have to break you because I'm running out of time and I've got a break to go to. But that's where I get really upset about this whole system, is that it is meant to be a safety net, not something to punish you with, not something some stick to beat you with. That's not right. Let's take a break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. It's Talk, and it's Petrie here with you, and we're talking about welfare benefits. And just in case you're interested, unemployment support in the UK compared to other European countries, right? So if you lose your job in the UK, the percentage of that you would get of your previous salary, looking at it, I know we don't measure it that way, is 12.55%. So there's a cliff, you fall off. If you live in Italy and you suddenly lose your job, you get 75% of your last salary as welfare. In Germany, it's 66.66% of your last salary. And in France, it's 57% of your last salary. That's a welfare system, isn't it? That's a system that works properly, isn't it? 12.5%. Sheldon, good morning.
Good morning, Petrie, my dear. How are you?
I'm very well. How's Mrs. Sheldon?
Mrs. Sheldon is sitting by the side of me, okay?
Oh, bless her.
She hasn't run off to bed yet, okay?
It's too hot. It's too hot, Sheldon.
Be careful now. You're on speaker, okay?
Okay. Hello, lovely.
Say hello, darling. Say hello.
I hope you're okay.
Hello, sweetie.
Anyway.
Yeah, welfare. What do you think?
Right. I'm going to stick to the PIP situation, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the points I have to make is regarding the terrible mess the government's got into. It's got its mess into financially regarding the welfare state. PIP is not a means-tested benefit.
No.
And I'm in receipt of PIP. Faye's in receipt of PIP. And we were in receipt of PIP before the reforms of IDF and everybody else came in for a very long time. And our conditions haven't got better. They've got worse because I'm 77 and my lady's 81. So I've got no complaints about receiving PIP at all. But what I do not understand is I don't want to make a distinction between the disabled rich and the disabled poor here. However, I know loads of people who have disabilities which are very similar to me, and they are running round in £60,000 expensive cars because they've got the top end of the benefit, which used to be DLA. They have no need to receive the top-up of this benefit at all because it's designed to help those people who have benefits who can't pay for the extra costs that are incurred by having to employ people and get help that they can't afford to do themselves. These people have all the money in the world to do that.
Well, they decided, didn't they, that the personal independence payment was for anybody who might need extra help with living their life.
Correct.
So it didn't matter, like you said, it's not means tested. So you could be a company executive.
Yes.
But you need a cab because you can't walk or you can't take public transport.
Yeah.
I can't take public transport, for example.
No, we can't either. No, we can't.
Because of my immune system. So it's too dangerous. So,
okay.
You know, so there has to be adjustment. I don't get PIP, but I don't see why I should get it either, in a way, because I'm working.
If you need extra financial help to look after yourself, because
it's extra financial help, isn't it? It shouldn't. I agree with you. It should be means tested in that regard.
There should be a method of means testing it to the extent where there is a cut-off somewhere, and this would probably save millions and millions of pounds. Because the ones that we are talking about, the silver surfers, who go off on their 3 holidays to Spain a year and drive the Mercedes-Benz and do all the things that people see which they think really annoy them.
Yeah, they don't need it, do they? It's not like it.
Need it.
Yeah,
No,
and
they
I
don't need it.
think it is time that we narrowed benefits like that to people in real need. Because to give it to somebody who doesn't need it just to top up their life in a way is.
And the point is, Petrie, there is no discrimination here between the physically and the mentally ill.
Yeah. That's true.
I'm not worried about that, because people do not understand people who are severely disabled in either way.
Yeah.
Or even extremely disabled in either way. Because if you have serious issues with your mental health, it can prevent you from doing all sorts of things. So I don't think you need to have two broken legs and walk around on two sticks. That is not the point. The point is, if you have sufficient income to be able to live your life to the full and be able to employ those people that you need to help you on occasions, that's where it should be a cut-off.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, Sheldon. Excellent call. I didn't realise you were a toy boy, though.
Oh, I'm very much a toy boy.
Oh, very much a toy boy.
You should listen to should watch me in the kitchen when I'm listening to Gold Radio. I am like John Travolta.
I bet you are. Oh, Sheldon, you're adorable. Good night to both of you. I hope you managed to find some respite in this heat. I've got to take another break, but I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good morning. This is Talk and it's Petrie, and I'm with you until the top of the hour, which gives us about 8 minutes, I guess, somewhere in that region. And we're talking about the welfare state in this country. And honestly, if you even rudimentary cast your eye across what other countries provide in terms of welfare and support, if you find yourself in a position where, you know, occasionally you might need it, it's extraordinary. The absolute nonsense that we put up with here. And it's not as if it's cheap either. I mean, the point is that this costs nearly 100 billion and it's rubbish. It doesn't work. It doesn't seem to work for anybody, does it? I mean, anyway, a lot of other countries pay an awful lot more money in tax, but that money seems to be being spent properly on society. And the problem is with this country is that money isn't spent on society in this country. It's spent on all sorts of other bogus rubbish that doesn't benefit society. And that's the problem, is that we're not really a socialist country. We never have been, we never will be. And because of that, we all pay through the teeth and get nothing for it, as opposed to other countries that pay through the teeth and actually get some support. John is in Newport. Good morning, John.
Good morning.
Nice to speak to you.
Thank you.
So tell me, John, have you tried to ever use the welfare state?
Only once, yeah. I'm 76 now, and I've been working. I was in the forces. I paid my taxes, etc., over the last 50 years. When I retired, I was fine. And then about 3 years ago, I got quite ill, and I was looked after extremely well by the NHS in Cardiff. They were fantastic, so I'm up for them. But when I came out, there was a couple of things that I couldn't do that I could do before. I live on my own. I have to look after myself, etc., And initially, I could hardly walk, let alone anything else. So it was suggested to me by my doctors and advisors that I should get some sort of support financially to pay my rent, is one thing. Although I do get a state pension, of course. But that wasn't enough to pay my rent on its own. So I decided to do that, and they said, "We'll get support from the welfare state, and they'll pay your rent and so on." Well, I applied, and I got absolutely nothing. I was told that because I had over £3,000 in my bank account as savings, which I'd saved over the last, more than that actually, but I'd saved over the last 30, 40 years, I was unable to apply for further financial assistance.
What? £3,000? I thought it was 16 grand.
Well, that's what I thought. I was told it was much more than £3,000. They said, no, you can't have more than $3,000 or £3,000, sorry. And you've got pension and this. I said, yes, but anyway, I got absolutely nothing. So I know some customers or some viewers have been saying to you, oh, yes, they can get this money fairly easy. It's not that easy, to be honest. And the system is obviously making sure, hopefully, that the right people get it. Now, I've managed to survive without it, but fortunately I've got a brother that's been helping me and coming to help me cook and clean and all the rest of it, because I can't afford to employ those people because I can't physically work anymore, which is a great pity, even though I'd like to work if I could. Your question is, would you pay more tax for a better welfare system? I think the question is, what is a better welfare system? My view is it's got nothing really to do with money. It's all about the support you get, whatever that might be. So if you've lost your job, you might need money, yes. But if it's other things like myself or people who have been unwell or whatever it may be or have nowhere to live, it's the provision of those services which is more important rather than the money you get for being in a particular condition, so to speak. So I think the welfare system should be physical, not financial.
That's an interesting point, actually, and it's almost like a voucher system, if you like, that then people would get the care in lieu of a financial payment. But what annoys me is that I've heard more times about people like yourself not getting help, that they go to every length to not support you, than I have of people scamming the system. And yet the stories that make the paper are the ones that scam the system and get loads of money out of it. Never the multitude of people who apply for help and don't get it.
Well, that's exactly what happened to me. I've still got no help at all, no financial help, certainly. I get no help from friends and family who come and help out and do this, that, and the other, help me in the garden and all that sort of stuff. So that's great, and it means I can stay where I am, but I'm still don't have a lot of money, and I'm suffering a bit, but we'll get by. I'm sure I'll get by, and I live on my own, so I've got no one else there to support me directly. So
and that's really harsh, and it's not. That's not what the welfare state is meant to be. It is meant to be that safety net when you need it. And too often I hear of people who are first of all made to feel like they're begging, which is wrong, because you've paid into it all your life. And then people who are told, no, you've got £3,000, which is woeful. I mean, that's pathetic of them. And then, no, sorry, you've got to be in this position or that position, or you're not entitled. That's not what it was meant to be, right?
Correct. Well, that's not the way I understood it. That's not why I paid into it for all the years I was working.
I understood it was there to support me when things were a bit dark, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, it reminds me of the whole COVID situation. And as somebody who, I was one of those people, one of those millions of people who didn't get a penny from anybody to help me survive through not working.
Yeah.
And you just think, well, hang on a minute. You know, what is this about? That there are certain people that just won't get any help ever, and some people who seem to get everything.
That appears to be, but whether those are factual or fiction, I don't know. That's the whole problem, isn't it? There's a lot of people say things that aren't quite true, and a lot of people say about other people that they don't really know what's going on, they just assume.
That's very true.
Think, you know, we have to be careful, I think. Everyone has to be careful to say, is that factual? Is that what actually happened? And if so, well, that's right or that's wrong, or that could be improved, maybe.
Yeah, again, John, I completely agree with you. And as a journalist, that's what I always try to do, is to make sure that I will say, look, you know, I've heard